If you're enjoying this video, smash that like button, subscribe, and hit the bell. Share it with your friends and let me know in the comments where you're watching from. Every like and subscribe helps the channel grow. My name is Michael Rodriguez. I've been a forest ranger for almost 8 years now. Before that, I was a firefighter in Los Angeles, but that's a story for another time. These days, I call the Northern California Redwood Forest my office, my sanctuary, and sometimes my burden. The redwoods are something else. If you've never stood at the base of one and looked up, it's hard to explain the feeling. They're just massive, bigger than buildings, with trunks wider than some cars. When you walk among them, it feels like being in a cathedral. The spaces between them create these perfect natural hallways with bark the color of cinnamon stretching up toward the sky. Today, I'm walking one of my favorite trails. It's a hot summer, record-breaking heat, they're saying on the news. But under these giants, it's cool and pleasant. The sunlight filters through the branches high above, casting this beautiful green glow over everything. The ground beneath my boots is soft with moss and ferns that cover every inch not claimed by tree roots. I love this job. I love being out here, surrounded by living things that were already ancient when my grandparents were born. When I touch the bark of these trees, I feel connected to something bigger than myself. But something doesn't feel right today. I stop walking and just listen. That's when I notice it, the silence. Usually this grove is alive with sounds, birds calling to each other, squirrels chattering, insects buzzing. Now there's nothing, not a chirp, not a rustle, just silence. And it makes the hair on my arms stand up. I check my watch. It's only 4:30 p.m., but in some spots between the trees, it looks like twilight already. The shadows seem darker, somehow deeper than they should be. Must be the angle of the sun this time of year, I tell myself. I reach for my radio to check in with headquarters. It's standard procedure when I'm out on a solo patrol. Base, this is Rodriguez, checking in from Trail 17. Over. The radio spits back a burst of static so loud I wince and pull it away from my ear. When I try again, the static is still there, but I can barely make out Linda's voice from dispatch. Read you. Interference. Position again. The rest is lost in crackling noise. That's odd. I'm not even in a remote area. This trail is well mapped and usually has perfect radio reception. I'm about to try a third time when I spot movement ahead. A young deer steps onto the path about 20 yards. In front of me, it's a doe, slender and delicate. But instead of darting away like deer normally do, she stops and stares right at me. Her eyes seem too knowing, too focused. For a crazy second, I feel like she's trying to tell me something. Then she bolts, disappearing between the trees. The fog is what really gets me worried. It starts as wisps curling between the redwoods, sliding along the ground like ghostly fingers. There shouldn't be fog here. Not now. We're miles from the coast, and it's the middle of a hot summer day. Fog doesn't behave this way. As I continue down the trail, it narrows and begins to slope downward into a valley I don't patrol as often. The trees grow closer together here, creating a natural maze. The trail is still clear, but the forest feels different, closed in, watching. I've spent most of my adult life in wilderness of one kind or another. I know the normal feelings of being alone in the woods, the peaceful solitude, the occasional startling noise, the subtle awareness of animals going about their business nearby. This is different. The air feels heavy, pressing down on me. It's the feeling you get when you walk into a room and interrupt people talking about you. Like the forest just noticed I'm here, and it's not happy about it. I shake my head, trying to clear these strange thoughts. I'm being ridiculous. Forests don't have feelings or awareness. I take a deep breath and push forward, but my hand unconsciously reaches for the small St. Christopher medal hanging from my neck, my father's lucky charm. The one thing of his I always carry with me. The fog is getting thicker now, and as I round the bend in the trail, I see something that makes me stop in my tracks. I take a step back, my heart beating a little faster. Up ahead, through the strange fog, I can make out a shape. As I get closer, I realize it's just my partner, Thomas Powell. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. "Powell," I call out. "I thought you were checking the east trails today." Thomas waves and walks toward me. He's just a kid, really, 24 years old and fresh out of college with a fancy degree in forestry. Smart but green. This is his first summer as a ranger. "Change of plans, Rodriguez," he says with that eager smile of his. "Linda radioed me about those missing cattle reports. Said you might need backup." I nod, though I'm surprised the radio worked for him when mine was giving me so much trouble. Powell has this energy about him that sometimes makes me feel all of my 42 years. His uniform still looks new, while mine has faded from countless days under the sun. "How'd you find me?" I ask. "Just followed Trail 17. Your truck was at the trailhead." He looks around at the towering trees. "Man, it's getting creepy out here with this fog, isn't it?" I don't tell Powell how uneasy I've been feeling. He already thinks I'm too intense about this job. People don't know what brought me to the Park Service. After 15 years as a firefighter in Los Angeles, I'd seen enough. Especially after what happened to Jack. We were fighting a forest fire that had jumped containment lines. Jack went into a clearing that looked safe, but a burning tree came down on him. I was just steps behind him, just steps too late. I touched my St. Christopher medal again. It was a gift from my father when I was just a boy. "Nature is the most powerful force there is, Mikey," he used to say. "Respect it, and it might respect you back." "You okay, Rodriguez?" Powell's voice pulls me back to the present. "Yeah," I say, blinking away the memories. "Just thinking about these cattle disappearances. Third one this month." Powell nods, looking serious. "The rancher who called it in was pretty upset. Said something tore through his fence like it was made of paper." "Bears can be strong when they're hungry enough," I say. But even as the words leave my mouth, I know this doesn't feel like bear behavior. That's what I said, but he wasn't buying it. Said there were weird tracks, too big for a bear. I sigh. Well, that's why we're out here. Let's check it out. As we walk deeper into the valley, I can't shake the feeling that something's watching us. The fog swirls around our legs, unusually thick for this time of year. The forest that normally feels like home now feels like somewhere I don't belong. "Have you noticed how quiet it is?" Powell whispers, his voice sounding too loud in the stillness. I nod. In my 8 years working these woods, I've never heard them this silent. Not during storms, not during fires, not even in the dead of winter. "I've been coming to this forest since I was a kid," I tell him. "My dad used to bring me camping here, but I've never seen it like this." Powell looks at me with curious eyes. He doesn't know much about my past. None of them do. They just know. I'm the guy who can identify any plant or animal in the forest, the one who knows every trail and stream, the ranger who stays out later than anyone else looking for lost hikers. "You know what's weird?" Powell says, lowering his voice even more. "I asked around about these cattle killings. 3 different ranches, all bordering the north side of the forest. No blood at any of the scenes. Just carcasses with parts. Missing. A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the cool air under the redwoods. Missing parts. Yeah, like organs. Removed clean, according to Sheriff Daniels. He said it looked almost surgical." I stop walking and turn to face him. "Powell, why didn't you tell me this earlier?" He shrugs, looking uncomfortable. "I don't know. Seemed too weird, I guess. Thought maybe the ranchers were exaggerating." I rub my face, feeling the stubble on my chin. I haven't shaved in 2 days. "Let's keep moving. I want to check out where that last cow was found before it gets dark. The path narrows even more as we descend deeper into the valley. The redwoods here grow so close together it's hard to tell where the trail ends and the forest begins. The fog isn't helping. Rodriguez, Powell says suddenly, stopping in his tracks. Look at this. He's pointing at the ground. I kneel down beside him, squinting through the dim light. There, pressed deep into the soft earth, is a footprint unlike anything I've ever seen. What do you make of that? Powell asks, his voice tight. The print is roughly canine in shape, but massive, at least twice the size of a large wolf's paw. And there's something else, something that makes my mouth go dry. The toes are too long, almost like fingers. Maybe it's distorted by the mud, I suggest, not believing it myself. Powell shakes his head. There's another one over here, and another. They're all the same. I stand up slowly, my eyes following the tracks as they disappear into the mist. As I do, I notice something else. The forest has gone completely silent. Not even the sound of wind through the branches. Just nothing. Powell, I say quietly, do you smell that? There's a scent on the air I can't place, musky and wild, but not like any animal I know. It reminds me of wet dog fur, but stronger, with something else underneath, something that makes my nose wrinkle. Yeah, he whispers. What is that? Don't answer. I'm too busy watching the fog swirl strangely about 20 yards ahead, as if something large is moving through it. My hand moves to the service weapon on my hip, something I've almost never had to draw in 8 years of ranger. Work. Stay close, I tell Powell, my voice barely audible. Something's not right here. The weight in the air has gotten heavier, pressing down on us. Even the forest seems to be holding its breath. And that's when my compass goes crazy, the needle spinning wildly in circles. What the hell? Powell says, staring at my compass. The needle won't stop spinning, around and around, like it's caught in some kind of magnetic storm. I've seen compasses get a little wonky near certain mineral deposits, but nothing like this. I put it back in my pocket and pull out my flashlight. Instead, even though it's not fully dark yet, the fog and thick trees make it hard to see clearly. I click it on. Nothing happens. Battery must be dead, I mutter, though I'd checked it just this morning before heading out. Powell tries his own flashlight. It flickers weakly for a second, then goes dark. Mine too, he says, looking at me with wide eyes. What are the chances? Of that, the question hangs in the air. 2 flashlights with fresh batteries, both dead at the same time. It doesn't make sense. I reach for my radio again. Base, this is Rodriguez. Do you copy? All I get is static, but there's something else mixed in with it now. A low, growling sound, and underneath that, what sounds like whispering. Did you hear that? Powell asks. I nod, turning the volume down. Must be interference. But what kind of interference sounds like growling and whispers? Let's keep moving, I say, trying to sound calmer than I feel. We still have a couple hours of daylight left. We follow the strange tracks deeper into the valley. The fog has settled into a thick blanket that hovers about knee-high above the ground. Our boots disappear into it with each step. Look there. Powell points suddenly. About 50 feet ahead, something large and dark lies on the ground between 2 massive redwoods. As we get closer, the smell hits us, the stench of meat gone bad in the summer heat. It's a cow, or what's left of one. The body is splayed open from throat to tail, but there's something wrong with the way it looks. There's no blood, Powell says, kneeling beside the carcass. He's right. The ground around the dead animal is completely clean, no dark stains on the pine needles and dirt. That's not possible, I say, looking closer. Not with wounds like these. And the wounds themselves are strange. The edges are too clean, too precise. No jagged tears like you'd see from a bear or mountain lion. It's almost like someone used a knife. But who would do this? And why, Rodriguez? Powell calls from the other side of the cow. You need to see this. I walk around and crouch next to him. He's pointing to the cow's chest cavity. The heart's gone, and the liver. Maybe other stuff too, I can't tell. A cold feeling settles in my stomach. This isn't a normal animal attack, not even close. We need to report this, I say, standing up quickly. Let's get back to the trucks. But as I turn around, I realize I'm not sure which way leads back to the trail. The fog has gotten thicker, and all the massive redwoods look the same in this light. That's when we smell it again, that strange musky odor, stronger now, and it seems to be coming from all around us. Do you remember which way we came from? Powell asks, a slight tremor in his voice. I point to what I think is the right direction. That way, I think. Look for our footprints. But the ground reveals no footprints, not even our own from just moments ago. It's as if the forest floor is swallowing them up. This doesn't make sense, Powell says, turning in a slow circle. We just walked through here. The smell gets stronger, and with it comes that strange heaviness in the air, like the forest is pressing down on us. I pull out my map, but in the dim light it's hard to read. Plus, something about the landscape doesn't match what I'm seeing. On paper, according to the map, we should be seeing a small stream to our east, but there's nothing but more trees and fog in that direction. Let's try this way, I say, picking what seems like the clearest path forward. After walking for what feels like hours, but is probably only 20 minutes according to my watch, we step into a clearing, and that's when I see them. Strange symbols, carved deep into the bark of the redwoods. The carvings form a perfect circle around the clearing. What are those? Powell asks, approaching one of the trees. Don't touch them, I warn, though I don't know why. Something about those symbols makes my skin crawl. The carvings look old. The edges weathered, but they must have been made with something extremely sharp to cut so deep into redwood bark. The symbols themselves are like nothing I've ever seen. Not Native American, not modern graffiti, not anything I can place. Powell, let's go, I say, turning back the way we came. But as we leave the clearing, I notice something else strange. Despite the drought that's had California in its grip all summer, the plants in this valley are lush and green. Ferns stretch up past our knees, and the moss covering the ground is thick and springy under our boots. We walk for another 15 minutes, following what looks like a game trail that might lead us back to the main path. Hold up, I say suddenly, stopping in my tracks. Do you recognize this place? Powell looks around, then his face falls. We're back at the clearing with the symbols. He's right. Somehow we've walked in a circle, ending up exactly where we started. That's impossible, I mutter, pulling out the map again. We were walking north the whole time. We try again, this time heading west. I keep my eyes on the compass, which has settled down a bit and now only jumps occasionally. After another 20 minutes of walking, Rodriguez, Powell says flatly. We're back at the clearing again. 3 times we try. 3 times we end up back at that circle of carved trees. The daylight is fading fast now. We're going to be caught in these woods after dark if we don't figure something out soon. Maybe we should just stay put, Powell suggests. Wait till morning when we can see better. I'm about to agree when I notice fresh marks on one of the trees, not the strange symbols, but deep gouges in the bark, like claw marks. They start at about 7 feet high and rake downward through the tough redwood skin. I place my hand against them. Each gouge is about as wide as my thumb, and deep enough that I can fit my finger inside it all the way to the second knuckle. Bear? Powell asks hopefully. I shake my head. Bears can't reach this high, and their claws don't usually cut this deep into redwood. As I pull my hand away from the tree, I notice something else. The claw marks weren't here when we first found the clearing. They're fresh, so fresh that there's still sap oozing from them. Something made these marks while we were wandering in circles, trying to find our way out. Powell sees the realization on my face. What is it? Before I can answer, a howl cuts through. The silence of the forest, a sound so loud and deep it seems to vibrate in my chest. It's like a wolf's call, but wrong somehow. Too complex, with layers of sound no wolf could make. And it's close, very close. Then we hear the response. More. Howls coming from all around us, encircling our position. Powell, I say quietly, drawing my service weapon. We need to run. Now. We run. There's no plan, no direction, just pure fear driving us forward through the darkening forest. The fog swirls around our legs as we crash through ferns and leap over fallen logs. Behind us I hear movement, fast, heavy footsteps crushing the underbrush. Whatever's chasing us is big, and it's not alone. There! Powell shouts, pointing to a gap between two massive redwoods. We squeeze through it, hoping to find a trail on the other side. Instead, we stumble into another clearing, smaller than the first. The fog is thinner here, and as we pause to catch our breath, I see movement at the edge of the trees. My flashlight is still dead, but there's just enough twilight left to make out shapes. Dark figures move between the distant trees. They're tall, taller than a man, and they move in a way that makes my blood run cold. Not quite like animals, not quite like humans. They walk on two legs, but there's something wrong with the shape of them. "Rodriguez," Powell whispers, his voice shaking. "Do you see them?" I nod, raising my gun. "Stay behind me." One of the figures steps forward, just to the edge of the clearing, but still half hidden by shadow. For a horrible moment, I can make out its outline clearly. It has the general shape of a wolf, but it's standing upright on two legs. It must be 7 feet tall at least, with a massive chest and arms that hang too long at its sides. Then I see its eyes, glowing amber in the dim light, reflecting what little daylight remains like a cat's eyes would. But these are bigger, and they're looking right at us, looking at us with intelligence. Powell makes a strangled sound beside me. "That's not possible." "Back away slowly," I tell him, keeping my gun trained on the creature. We take one step back, then another. The thing doesn't move, just watches us. Then I see more eyes glowing in the darkness behind it. 3 pairs, 4, 5. They've surrounded the clearing. They're cutting us off, I realize aloud. Herding us. What are they? Powell's voice has gone up an octave. I don't answer. I don't have one. One of the creatures steps fully into view now, moving with impossible silence for something so large. Its body is covered in dark fur, matted in places. Its head is wolf-like but larger, with a longer snout filled with teeth. I can see even from this distance. Its hands, not paws, but hands with long fingers ending in wicked claws, hang at its sides. I fire a warning shot into the air. The sound is deafening in the quiet forest. The creature jumps back into the shadows, and for a moment, all the glowing eyes disappear. But I know they're still there, watching, waiting. I think I scared them off, I say, trying to sound confident. Rodriguez, Powell says in a strange voice. I can hear them. What do you mean? I don't hear anything. In my head, he whispers, pressing his palms against his temples. Voices, whispering. I look at him sharply. His face has gone pale, and there's sweat beading on his forehead despite the cool air. What are they saying, I ask, though I'm not sure I want to know. Powell shakes his head. I can't make it out. It's like they're arguing about us. A chill runs through me that has nothing to do with the dropping temperature. We need to get back to the trucks. You don't understand, Powell says, his eyes wide. I know where we are now. I can see the map in my head. They showed me. Who showed you? Them. He points to the forest around us. We're in the center of their territory. Our trucks are miles away to the north. I grab his arm. Powell, listen to me. Whatever you're hearing, it's not real. It's stress or fear. Oh, dude, it's real, he snaps, pulling away from me. And they want us to go deeper into the valley. That's when I remember something. The Fire Watch Tower. It's only about 2 miles east of here, if I've got our position right. It would be a defensible position, with a radio that might actually work. We're going east, I tell him firmly. There's a fire tower that way. We can call for help. Powell looks uncertain, his gaze darting to the trees where the creatures were. I don't think they want us to go that way. All the more reason to do it, I say, grabbing his arm again. Come on. As we move in what I hope is eastward, the forest grows, denser. The drought has caused many of the smaller trees to die, and they've fallen to create a maze of obstacles. More than once, we have to backtrack and find another route. Powell grows increasingly jumpy, stopping to look over his shoulder or cocking his head as if listening to something I can't hear. They're following us, he says, after one such pause. All around us, moving through the trees. I don't see anything, but I believe him. The feeling of being watched is stronger than ever. Keep moving, I urge him. The going is slow, too slow. Full darkness has fallen now, and without working flashlights, we're stumbling blindly through the woods. The moon is up, but its light barely penetrates the thick canopy overhead. After what feels like forever, we reach a small stream cutting through the forest floor. It's nearly dry from the drought, just a trickle of water over smooth stones. We can follow this, I say, relieved to have found a landmark. Streams always lead somewhere. As we pick our way along the stream bed, I notice Powell lagging behind, moving strangely. You okay? I call back to him. When he looks up, I almost stumble. Backward. His eyes catch the faint moonlight filtering through the trees, and for a split second they seem to glow amber, just like the creatures. I'm fine, he says. But his voice sounds different, deeper, with a strange cadence. Powell, we're almost. There, I lie, trying to keep him focused. Just a little further. He doesn't respond, just stares at me with those strange eyes. Then he blinks and they look normal again. Must have been a trick of the light. I don't feel good, Rodriguez, he says finally, his voice his own again. Something's wrong with me. Before I can ask what he means, we hear a howl, that same complex, layered sound from before. But this time, it's followed by a pattern almost like speech. And the really terrifying part is when the other howls respond, matching the pattern exactly. They're talking, Powell whispers. Planning. How do you know that? I ask, fear making my voice harsh. I told you, I can hear them, in my head. He takes a shuddering breath. They're saying our truck won't help us. What does that mean? Powell just shakes his head, eyes wide with fear. We keep moving, following the stream as it winds through the forest. The moon rises higher, providing just enough light to see by. The fog has lifted somewhat, but now shadows seem to move all around us, darting between trees just at the edge of vision. Rodriguez, Powell says suddenly, stopping in his tracks. I think we're going the wrong way. The tower is east, I insist. We're heading east. No, we need to go south, deeper into the valley. The certainty in his voice makes me uneasy. Why south? His eyes dart nervously to the trees around us. I feel like that's the right way. Powell, listen to me. Something's happening to you. Those things, whatever they are, they're trying to trick us, lead us where they want us to go. He looks confused for a moment, then shakes his head as if trying to clear it. You're right, sorry. I don't know what came over me. We continue along the stream, moving as quietly as possible, but it's hard to be silent when you're stumbling through a dark forest. Our boots crunch on dry leaves and snap fallen twigs, each sound seeming to echo in the quiet night. Every few minutes, we hear movement in the woods around us, branches rustling, leaves crunching. But whenever I turn to look, there's nothing there but shadows. They're herding us, I mutter, the realization hitting me hard, driving us like cattle. Where? Powell asks, his voice thin with fear. I don't know, but I don't like it. I try to veer away from the stream, heading what I think is northeast, but the forest seems to fight us. Fallen trees block our path. Thick underbrush forms impenetrable walls, forcing us back toward the water. It's like the forest itself is against us, Powell says, echoing my thoughts. After another hour of this, I have to admit we're lost. The Stream should have led us to something, a river, a road, anything. But instead, it just winds endlessly through identical stretches of forest. We stopped to rest under a massive redwood, both of us breathing hard from the effort of climbing over. Yet another fallen tree. The temperature has dropped sharply, and I can see our breath fogging in the night air. Do you think we could climb one of these trees? Powell suggests. Get above the canopy, see where we are. I look up at the nearest redwood. The lowest branches are still a good 30 feet above our heads, and the trunk is too wide to get a good grip on. Not a chance, I say, but it's a good thought. Powell nods, then suddenly stiffens. Did you hear that? I listen. At first, there's nothing but the faint bubble of the stream. Then I hear it, a voice, human but faint, calling from somewhere ahead of us. Hello? Is someone there? We need help. Powell stands up immediately. There are people out here. We need to help them. Something doesn't feel right about this. Why would anyone be calling for help in this remote part of the forest at night? Wait. I grab Powell's arm. It could be a trick, but he's already pulling away, moving toward the voice. They need help, Rodriguez. We can't just leave them. I have no choice but to follow him, my gun drawn and ready. As we move toward the voice, I can't shake the feeling that we're walking straight into a trap. We push through a thick patch of bushes, following the voice calling for help. Powell is moving faster now, almost running. Slow down, I call after him. We need to stay together. He doesn't listen. Something's wrong with him. He's not thinking clearly. I hurry to catch up, branches scratching at my face as I run. We burst into another clearing, and I nearly collide with Powell, who has stopped dead in his tracks. There's nobody here. No lost hikers, no one calling for help. I don't understand, Powell says, turning in a circle. I heard them. They were right here. The hairs on the back of my neck stand up. I raise my gun, scanning the trees around us. It was a trick, I say quietly. We need to go, now. But it's too late. From the darkness comes a low growl, and then they step into the clearing. 3 of them, the wolfmen creatures. They're even more terrifying up close. Their bodies are a twisted mix of wolf and human, covered in matted fur. Their faces are the worst part. Too long, with jaws that could crush bone, but with eyes that hold an intelligence that no animal should have. I fire a shot at the closest one. It yelps and jumps back, but I can't tell if I actually hurt it or just scared it. Run! I shout to Powell, firing another shot to keep them at bay. We take off through the trees, no longer caring about noise or direction, just desperate to get away. Behind us, I hear them howling, calling to each other. They're coordinating like wolves on a hunt. The forest blurs around us as we run for our lives. My lungs burn and my legs ache, but fear keeps me moving. Powell is just ahead of me, running, just as hard. Suddenly, he stops and grabs my arm, pulling me behind a massive fallen tree. Listen, he whispers. Through my pounding heartbeat, I hear it. Engines, car engines, not too far away. The road, I breathe, hope surging through me. We're near the road. We change direction, heading toward the sound. The trees start to thin out, and I can see moonlight reflecting off something ahead. Pavement, we're going to make it, I tell Powell, who's breathing hard beside me. Then I hear a scream, a human scream, from somewhere near the road. We freeze. Someone's in trouble, Powell says, and before I can stop him, he's running toward the sound. Powell, wait, I call after him, but he's already disappeared into the trees. I follow as fast as I can, pushing through the underbrush. I break through to a small turnout on the forest road where 2 cars are parked. A couple of college kids, a guy and a girl, are standing beside their car, looking confused and scared. And Powell is walking toward them. But something's wrong. Powell isn't moving right. His steps are jerky, unnatural, and when he turns slightly and the moonlight catches his face, I see his eyes glowing amber, just like the creatures. Powell! I shout. Stop! He doesn't even look at me. He keeps walking toward the frightened couple, his hands now curled into claws at his sides. The young man steps in front of the girl. Hey, man. Are you okay? Do you need help? Powell growls, not a human sound at all, and lunges at them. I don't have time to think. I raise my gun and fire. The shot hits Powell in the back. He stumbles forward, then turns to look at me. For just a second, his eyes clear. They're normal again, filled with confusion and pain. Rodriguez, he says, his voice his own again. What's happening to me? Then he collapses to the ground. The couple is screaming now. I run to them, showing me Ranger badge. Get in your car and go, I tell them. Drive to the ranger station. Tell them Rangers Rodriguez and Powell need emergency backup at Forest Road 17. They don't need to be told twice. They jump in their car and tear away down the road, tires squealing. I kneel beside Powell. He's still breathing, but barely. Blood soaks the back of his uniform. I'm sorry, I tell him, though I don't know if he can hear me. I didn't have a choice. His eyes flutter open. They're his own brown eyes now. No trace of that amber glow. Not your fault, he whispers. They were in my head, controlling me. His hand grips my arm with surprising strength. They made me see things, made me think things. They wanted me to... He coughs, specks of blood on his lips. They're coming, Rodriguez. You need to run. As if on cue, I hear them. Howls from the forest, closer now, and I can see shapes moving among the trees, coming toward us. I'm not leaving you, I tell Powell. You have to, he insists, his voice getting weaker. They want something in the valley, something important. You have to stop them. I look down at my dying partner, then at the road stretching empty in both directions. No help is coming anytime soon. I reach into my pocket and pull out my emergency. Flares. There are 3 of them. I'll stop them. I promise Powell, but it's too late. His eyes are fixed and empty now. He's gone. I stand up, grief and rage mixing inside me. I can see them clearly now, 5 of the creatures at the edge of the trees watching me. One of them is bigger than the others, with silvery fur running along its back. The Alpha. I strike the first flare. It bursts into bright red light, illuminating the turnout. The creatures back away slightly, not liking the fire. I draw a circle around myself with the flare, leaving a trail of sparks and flame on the dry ground. The drought-stricken brush catches quickly. Soon I'm standing in a ring of fire with Powell's body at my feet. The creatures pace outside the fire ring, growling in frustration. I know the flames won't last long. I need a plan. That's when I notice my service weapon lying on the ground where I dropped it to check on Powell. It's outside the fire ring. The Alpha sees me looking at it. Our eyes meet, and in that moment I understand what Powell meant. This thing is intelligent, maybe as intelligent as a human, and it's been planning this all along. The fire is already dying in spots. I won't have much time. I strike the second flare and throw it as far as I can into the forest, away from the road. It lands among some dry bushes, which immediately catch fire. The creatures howl in alarm, several of them running toward the new. Fire to stamp it out, but the Alpha stays, watching me. It knows what I'm doing. With the third flare in hand, I make a decision. I can't win this fight, but maybe I can buy time for help to arrive, for someone to find out what's happening in these woods. I strike the flare and hold it high, looking the Alpha directly in its glowing eyes. You want something in that valley, I say, not knowing if it can understand my words, but knowing it can understand my intent. Well, you'll have to go through me to get it. I throw the flare directly at the Alpha. It dodges easily, but that's not what I was aiming for. The flare lands in a patch of dry grass behind it, starting another fire. Now there are flames on 3 sides. The only way out is the road. I make a run for it, jumping over the dying part of my fire ring. I grab my gun from the ground and sprint toward the road. I almost make it. The Alpha is faster than I expected. It cuts me off before I reach the pavement, moving with impossible speed for something so large. Up close, it's even more terrifying. It towers over me, at least 7 feet tall, with muscles rippling under its dark fur. Its mouth is open, showing teeth that could tear me apart in seconds. I raise my gun and fire my last bullet directly into its chest. The creature staggers backward, looking down at the wound in surprise. Black blood oozes from the hole. For a moment I think I've won. The alpha falls to one knee, its breathing ragged. Then it looks up at me and makes a sound no animal should be able to make. It laughs. The wound in its chest is already closing. My bullet didn't even slow it down. I back away, but I'm trapped now. Fire on one side, creature on the other, forest at my back. The alpha rises to its full height again. Its eyes bore into mine, and suddenly I feel it. The pressure in my head that Powell described, voices whispering, trying to get in. I press my hands to my temples, trying to block it out. No, I growl through gritted teeth. The alpha takes a step toward me, reaching out one clawed hand. I think of my father's words. Nature is the most powerful force there is, Mikey. Respect it, and it might respect you back. But this thing isn't nature. It's something else, something that doesn't belong here. With the last of my strength, I fight against the voice in my head and lunge forward, driving my shoulder into the alpha's midsection. We both go down, rolling on the ground. I'm no match for its strength. In seconds, it has me pinned, its hot breath on my face, claws digging into my shoulders. As its jaws open wide to tear into me, I reach for the St. Christopher medal around my neck, my father's lucky charm, and tear it free. With one desperate movement, I jam it into the creature's eye. It howls in pain, rearing back. I scramble away, running for the road again. This time, I make it to the pavement. I can hear vehicles approaching, headlights appear around the bend. Help is coming, but so are the rest of the pack. They emerge from the forest, encircling me, cutting off my escape. The alpha, one eye now a ruined mess, leads them forward. I stand my ground, empty gun still in my hand. If I'm going to die, I'll die facing them. The creatures charge all at once. I feel claws tearing into me, teeth finding my throat. The pain is blinding, overwhelming. My last thought as darkness takes me is of the redwoods. Those ancient giants that have seen so much, that will still be standing long after these monsters and I are gone. 3 weeks later, Forest Service investigators stand in the same turnout, looking at the evidence markers placed on the ground. So what's the official story? Asks a young ranger, looking at the bloodstains still visible on the pavement. The lead investigator sighs, closing his notebook. Bear attack. 2 rangers in the wrong place at the wrong time. And the campers who reported it, they said they saw something else. They were kids, probably drinking. They saw a man in shock, probably delirious from his own injuries. The investigator looks toward the forest, a troubled expression on his face. Bears. That's what everyone needs to believe. Later that day, a special cleanup crew moves through the valley, removing every trace of the strange symbols carved into the trees. The official report mentions nothing about missing organs, unexplained tracks, or wolfmen standing on 2 legs. The forest keeps its secrets, and in the deepest part of the valley, where the redwoods grow thick and ancient, something waits in the shadows, watching, planning, ready for the next unwary visitor who wanders too far from the marked trails. Because some stories aren't meant to be believed until it's too late. My name is Amelia Foster. I'm a ranger at Okefenokee National Wildlife Refuge, and I've been working here for almost 5 years now. Before that, I was a professor studying water systems, but university politics drove me away. Out here in the swamp, it's just me, the wildlife, and the water. At least, that's what I thought. It was a Tuesday morning when everything changed. The mist hung low over the dark water like it always does at dawn. I remember pushing my small aluminum boat away from the dock. the sound of water lapping against the sides. All around me stretched the Okefenokee swamp, endless water, cypress trees with their knobby knees poking up, and floating islands of peat. The Spanish moss hung from the branches like grey curtains, dripping water that made a soft, musical sound. I was out collecting water samples that day. Just routine work. I had my notebooks, sample containers, and testing equipment, all neatly, organized the way I like. The morning sun was trying to break through the cypress canopy, but it never really succeeds. The swamp exists in a kind of permanent twilight, with the water so dark it looks like tea. My grandmother used to tell me stories about this swamp. She gave me this jade pendant I always wear, said it would protect me from water spirits. I never really believed her stories, of course. I'm a scientist. I believe in what I can measure, test, and prove, but sometimes, when I'm alone out here, those old stories creep back into my mind. That morning, I had two people with me. Dr. Martin Reynolds, a biologist who specializes in wetland ecosystems, and his graduate student, Eliza Washington. Martin is brilliant but stubborn, the kind of scientist who hates being wrong. Eliza is young and eager, always asking questions. Good questions, too. She reminds me of myself before my ex-husband stole my research and left me. Questioning everything. The water level seems higher than normal for this season, Martin said, trailing his hand in the dark water. It hasn't rained in weeks, I replied, guiding our boat through a familiar channel. I knew these waterways like the back of my hand. I'd mapped sections nobody else had bothered with, tracked underwater currents others didn't even know existed. As we moved deeper into the swamp, I noticed something odd. Several bird nests along the channel were abandoned, eggs left untouched. That wasn't right. Not mid-season like this. Martin, look at those nests, I pointed. Have you ever seen mockingbirds abandon their eggs like that? He frowned, adjusting his glasses. Never, not unless they were disturbed by a predator, but there's no sign of that. I slowed the boat, making a note in my waterproof journal. Something didn't feel right. I touched my grandmother's pendant without thinking, a habit when I'm uneasy. The Archdice radio's acting up, Eliza said, fiddling with our communication device. Static crackled through the speaker, rising and falling in strange patterns that almost sounded like words. We should be well within range of the station. I was about to respond when an alligator slid into the water ahead of us. Now, I've seen hundreds of gators in my time here. They usually display some aggression when you get close, a warning to stay away from their territory, but this one just retreated, almost like it was afraid. Did you see that? I asked. That gator's behavior was unusual. Martin nodded slowly. Very, almost like it was running from something. As we continued, tendrils of fog began forming right at the water's surface. That wasn't normal either, not with the temperature as warm as it was. And the fog moved wrong, swirling against the wind in patterns that made no scientific sense. Let's head down that narrow channel, I said, pointing to a barely visible opening in the vegetation. There's a section of the swamp there I've been, meaning to sample. Not many people go there, not even the other rangers. As I turned the boat, I felt it. A subtle shift in the water beneath us. A current moving against the natural flow, as if something large was moving underneath our boat, displacing the water as it went. I gripped the pendant tighter, my grandmother's words echoing in my mind. There are things in the deep water, Amelia. Things that are neither fish nor human. Things that watch and wait and hunger. For the first time in my scientific career, I wondered if some stories might contain more truth than I'd been willing to admit. The narrow channel was tighter than I remembered. Branches scraped against our boat as we pushed through. Nobody spoke. Much now, even the swamp itself seemed quieter than usual. Is it just me, or are there no bird calls? Eliza whispered, looking up at the twisted branches above us. She was right. The normal chorus of bird sounds was missing. Just the drip of water and the soft hum of our boat motor broke the silence. "Maybe they sense a storm coming," Martin suggested. But his voice didn't sound convinced. I checked my watch and frowned. We should still have good radio contact with the station. I picked up the radio and tried again. "Ranger Station 1, this is Foster. Do you copy?" The static crackled, then formed into something that made my skin crawl. It wasn't words exactly, but it wasn't random either. Almost like singing. I quickly turned it off. "Equipment malfunction," I said, trying to sound normal. But I caught Martin's eye, and I could tell he didn't believe me either. As we pushed deeper into this remote section, I noticed more strange things, ripples in the water that had no clear source. Circles spreading outward from spots where nothing visible had disturbed the surface. I stopped the boat near a small island to take some water samples. The water looked darker here, almost black instead of its usual tea color. When I dipped my testing equipment in, the readings made no sense. "This can't be right," I muttered, trying again. "The oxygen levels are all wrong, and these mineral readings—" Martin looked over my shoulder at the numbers. "That's impossible. Water doesn't naturally have that chemical makeup." "Maybe your equipment is broken," Eliza suggested. I shook my head. "I calibrated everything this morning." I had been doing this work too long to make basic mistakes. While I took more samples, Eliza wandered a few feet away along the island's edge. Suddenly she called out, "Dr. Foster, Dr. Reynolds, you need to see this." We hurried over. Eliza was standing over what looked like the remains of a raccoon at the water's edge. But something was very wrong with it. The cuts on its body were too clean, too precise, like surgical incisions, not the tearing you'd see from normal predators. "What could have done this?" she asked, her voice shaking a little. "I don't know," I admitted, and that scared me more than anything. In 5 years, I'd seen all kinds of predator kills. This was different. As we examined it, a strange smell hit me, sweet but rotten, like overripe fruit mixed with chemicals. It seemed to be coming from the water in this area. "Let's move on," I said, suddenly eager to keep going. We still have more samples to collect. Back in the boat, I noticed Martin looking worried at his own equipment. "Amelia, my sonar is picking up some unusual movement patterns." He turned the small screen toward me. "See these signals? They're too organized for fish or alligators. Almost like coordinated movement." I felt a chill that had nothing to do with the temperature. "How deep is the water here?" "About 15 feet, but these signals—" He shook his head. "They're coming from the bottom, moving up, then back down again. I've never seen behavior like this." The radio suddenly crackled to life, making us all jump. No one had touched it. The static organized itself into that strange singing sound again, louder this time. It was no language I'd ever heard before, high-pitched, with odd pauses and tones that hurt my ears. Eliza reached over and shut it off, her hand shaking. "What was that?" "Radio interference," Martin said quickly. "Has to be." But I noticed how he gripped the side of the boat until his knuckles turned white. The sun was getting lower now, creating long shadows across the water. We needed to find a place to set up camp for the night. I spotted a larger island ahead with higher ground, a good place to stay dry and safe. As I steered toward it, something large moved underwater just to the left of our boat. I only caught a glimpse, a shadow passing beneath the surface, but it was big, much bigger than any fish or alligator in these waters. "Did you see that?" I asked, my voice unnaturally tight. Martin and Eliza were looking in the wrong direction. They saw nothing. "See what?" Martin asked. I hesitated. "Nothing. Probably just a big garfish." But I knew it wasn't a gar. When we reached the island and started setting up our tents, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. From the water, by something that shouldn't exist. As darkness fell, we sat around our small camp stove, eating our dinner in silence. The usual night sounds of the swamp seemed muffled, distant. "I keep hearing something," Eliza said suddenly. Like a tune or a song. Does anyone else hear it? Martin and I looked at each other and shook our heads. It's probably just the wind. In the cypress trees, I said. Sound carries strangely over water, but there was no wind tonight, not even a breeze, and the look in Eliza's eyes troubled me. She kept staring at the water, even as we prepared to sleep. Tomorrow we'll head back to the station, I decided. I think we have enough samples for now. I didn't say what I was really thinking. Something is wrong here. Something is very wrong. And we need to get out while we still can. I took the first watch that night, sitting outside my tent with a flashlight and my grandfather's old hunting knife. I told myself it was just precaution against normal swamp predators, but deep down, I knew I was watching for something else, something that moved beneath the surface. I must have dozed off during my watch. I woke with a start, my neck stiff from sitting against a tree. The night was still dark, probably around 3 a.m. Something had woken me, a sound or movement I couldn't quite place. Martin! Eliza, I called softly, not wanting to wake them if they were still asleep. No answer came from their tents. I grabbed my flashlight and stood up, stretching my sore muscles. As the beam of light swept across our small camp, I noticed something that made my blood run cold. Claw marks, 3-fingered scratches in the dirt, too big for any raccoon or possum. They led from the water's edge straight to our equipment cases, which now lay open, their contents scattered. I hurried to wake the others. Martin! Eliza, wake up! I called louder this time. Martin emerged from his tent, blinking sleepily. What's wrong? Someone, or something, went through our equipment while we were sleeping. I pointed my flashlight at the claw marks. Look at these tracks. He knelt down, suddenly wide awake. These aren't from any animal I know. The spacing is all wrong, and look at how deep they are. Whatever made these was heavy. I turned to Eliza's tent. Eliza, you need to see this. No answer. Eliza? I unzipped her tent flap and shined my light inside. Empty. Her sleeping bag was there, but she wasn't in it. She's gone, I said, my voice tight with worry. Her boots are still here. Martin and I searched the small island, calling her name. It didn't take long. The island wasn't big. There was no sign of her. She wouldn't just wander off without her boots, Martin said, his face pale in the flashlight beam. Especially not in the middle of the night, I nodded, trying to stay calm despite the fear gnawing at my stomach. Let's check the water's edge. Maybe she heard something and went to investigate. We circled the island, our flashlights cutting through the darkness. When we reached the far side, Martin suddenly grabbed my arm. There, in the water. I looked where he was pointing. At first, I saw nothing. Then, about 20 feet from shore, something broke the surface. In the darkness, I could only make out a shape. A head and shoulders, it seemed. Human-like, but not quite right. The skin caught the moonlight with an odd sheen, almost like it was covered in tiny scales. Eliza, I called, though deep down, I knew it wasn't her. The figure remained motionless, just watching us. Then without a splash or ripple, it sank beneath the surface. What was that? Martin whispered, his grip on my arm painfully tight. Before I could answer, we heard a voice. From behind us. What are you two doing up so early? We spun around. Eliza stood there, looking completely normal, if a bit confused. Eliza, where were you? I demanded, relief and suspicion fighting inside me. I needed to use the bathroom, she said simply. What's going on? Martin and I exchanged glances. We woke up and found our equipment disturbed, I explained, watching her face carefully. And you weren't in your tent. Oh. She smiled, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. Well, I'm fine. Just nature called, you know. Something felt off. Her voice was flat, missing its usual energy, and she wasn't asking about what we'd just seen in the water, even though she must have noticed us staring out at the swamp with our flashlights. You didn't bring your boots, Martin pointed out. Eliza looked down at her bare feet, as if noticing them for the first time. I guess I was half asleep. Didn't think about it. I nodded slowly, not convinced, but unsure what to think. Let's get back to camp. We need to check what's missing from our equipment. As we walked back, I noticed Eliza was humming softly, that same strange melody we'd heard on the radio. When I asked her about it, she just shrugged. It's been stuck in my head since yesterday. Don't you hear it? It's like it's coming from everywhere. Back at camp, we discovered several water samples were missing, along with Martin's backup sonar device. But the strangest thing was my notebook. It was still there, but several pages had been torn out. The pages with my maps and notes about the underwater currents. We're leaving at first light, I decided. Something isn't right here, Martin agreed. Quickly, Eliza just kept humming that eerie tune, staring at the dark water. None of us went back to sleep. We sat in tense silence, waiting for dawn. As the first grey light appeared, we packed up quickly, eager to be gone. But when we tried to leave, we hit a problem. This isn't right, I said, studying my compass. We should be heading north to get back to the main channel, but the compass keeps spinning. Maybe it got damaged when our equipment was tampered with, Martin suggested. I shook my head. I have a backup. I pulled it from my waterproof bag. It did the same thing, the needles spinning wildly, never settling on a direction. We don't need a compass, Eliza said, her voice oddly calm. I know the way. She pointed to a narrow channel I didn't recognize. We should go that way. That's east, I said firmly. We need to go north. Trust me, she insisted. I know. Martin and I exchanged concerned glances. This wasn't like Eliza at all. We'll stick to my original route, I said firmly. I know these waters better than anyone. We set off in what I thought was the right direction, but nothing looked familiar. Channels that should have been there were blocked by vegetation. Landmarks I remembered were missing or appeared in the wrong places. After an hour of confused navigation, Martin voiced what I was thinking. We're going in circles, he said quietly. Look, there's that cypress with the broken branch we passed earlier. He was right. Somehow, despite my best efforts, we'd ended up back where we started, or somewhere that looked exactly like it. This is impossible, I muttered, checking my GPS unit. But it showed only static, the screen flickering with strange symbols that weren't part of any map. As we drifted, uncertain what to do next, Eliza suddenly stood up in the boat, nearly tipping us over. Listen, she said excitedly, it's getting louder, can't you hear it now? She was humming again, swaying slightly as if to music only she could hear. Then, without warning, she dove into the water. Eliza! Martin shouted, reaching for her too. Late, she surfaced a few yards away, smiling in a way that made my skin crawl. It's beautiful down there, she said. You should come see. They want to show us something. Who does? I demanded, but she just laughed and dove again. This time she didn't come back up. Eliza! I screamed, scanning the dark water. Martin and I leaned over opposite sides of the boat, searching desperately for any sign of her. There! Martin pointed, to ripples about 30 feet away. I started the motor, steering carefully toward the spot. But by the time we got there, the water was still again. I'm going in after her, Martin said, already pulling off his jacket. I grabbed his arm. Wait, something's not right. She was acting strange, and we don't know what's down there. We can't. Just let her drown. He jerked his arm away. She didn't look like she was drowning, I said quietly. She looked happy. Martin stared at me, his face a mix of anger and fear. What are you saying? Before I could answer, something bumped the bottom of our boat. Hard. We both grabbed the sides to steady ourselves. What was that? Martin whispered. Another bump, stronger. This time nearly tipping us over. Then another. Whatever was hitting us was big, and there seemed to be more than one. I made a quick decision. We need to get to land. Now. I gunned the motor toward the nearest island, trying to keep the boat steady as the impacts continued. We hit the shore hard, the front of the boat grinding against mud and roots. We jumped out, grabbing what supplies we could. Wait, Martin said suddenly, pointing at the water behind us. About 50 feet away, Eliza's head broke the surface. She smiled and waved at us. "Come back," she called. "It's wonderful down here. They want to meet you." "Who wants to meet us, Eliza?" I shouted back. "What's down there?" She just laughed, the sound echoing strangely across the water. Then she dove again, her feet flipping up in a way that made my stomach turn. They didn't look quite right, almost, like they were webbed. "That's not Eliza," I whispered to Martin. "Or at least not only Eliza." He looked at me like I was crazy, but I could see doubt in his eyes too. He'd noticed something off about her as well. "We need to find high ground," I said, shouldering my emergency pack. "Somewhere our radio might work." We pushed through thick vegetation, moving toward the center of the island where the ground rose slightly. As we walked, Martin kept glancing back at the water. "What do you think happened to her?" he asked, his voice shaking. I thought about the strange figure we'd seen in the water earlier, the inhuman way it had slipped beneath the surface without a ripple. "I think something got to her," I said carefully. "Something that can change how people think, maybe even how they look." "That's impossible," he said automatically, but without conviction. I stopped walking and faced him. "Martin, you're a scientist. Look at the evidence, the strange readings, the abandoned nests, the way Eliza changed. Something is in that water that doesn't belong there." He didn't argue. He'd seen too much now to deny it. We reached a small clearing on higher ground. The trees weren't as thick here, which might give our radio a better chance. I pulled it out and tried again. "Ranger Station 1, this is Foster. Emergency, do you copy?" To my surprise, instead of static, a voice crackled through. It was faint, but clear enough. "Foster, this is Station 1. Where are you?" "You're tracking. Beacon stopped working yesterday." Hope surged through me. "We're in trouble. Send a rescue team to—" I looked at Martin. "Where exactly are we?" He was staring back the way we'd come, his face drained of color. "Amelia," he whispered. "Look." I turned. Eliza was standing at the edge of the clearing, but not just Eliza. Standing beside her was Martin. An exact copy of Martin, down to the mud stains on his pants and the small tear in his shirt sleeve. Looked back and forth between the real Martin beside me and his double. They were identical. "What the hell?" the real Martin breathed. The fake Martin smiled. It wasn't a normal smile. It stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. "Come with us," Eliza and the fake Martin said together, their voices eerily synchronized. "They're waiting," the radio in my hand squawked. "Foster, are you there? What's your location?" I raised it to reply, but Eliza suddenly lunged forward with impossible speed. She knocked the radio from my hand, sending it flying into the underbrush. "No outside help," she said, her voice deeper than it should be. "Just us." The real Martin grabbed a fallen branch, holding it like a club. "Stay back," he warned. The fake Martin's smile grew even wider. "Don't be afraid of yourself," it said, taking a step closer. I pulled out my hunting knife, backing up slowly. "Martin, we need to run, now!" We turned and sprinted deeper into the island, crashing through the undergrowth. Behind us, I could hear Eliza and the fake Martin following, moving with a strange, fluid grace that let them gain on us quickly. "Split up!" I shouted to Martin. "I'll meet you on the other side of the island." He nodded and veered left while I went right. I hated separating, but it might confuse our pursuers. I ran until my lungs burned, then ducked behind a large cypress to catch my breath. I couldn't hear anyone following me now. Had my plan worked? After a few minutes, I continued more cautiously, working my way toward what I hoped was the opposite shore of the island. I needed to find Martin and figure out a way off this island. As I pushed through a dense patch of palmettos, I heard voices ahead. Relief washed over me. Martin had made it. I hurried forward, then stopped dead in my tracks. Martin was there all right, but he wasn't alone. He was talking to himself. Two identical Martins stood facing each other in a small clearing. I couldn't tell which was the real one. "Amelia," one of them called when he saw me. "Thank God, this thing showed up looking like me. It's trying to trick you." "Don't listen to it," the other Martin said. "I'm the real Martin. That thing followed me and changed to look like me." They were identical. Same clothes, same voice, same desperate expression. How could I possibly tell them apart? Then I remembered something small but important. "If you're the real Martin," I said, looking between them, "tell me what happened to your watch." One Martin looked confused. The other immediately answered, "It got cracked when we were loading the boat yesterday morning. I hit it against the supply case." That was right. I remembered him complaining about it. I pointed my knife at the other Martin. "You're not him." The fake Martin's face went blank for a moment. Then that too wide smile spread across its features. "Clever," it said, in a voice that no longer sounded quite like Martin's. "But it doesn't matter." It lunged at me with frightening speed. I jumped sideways just in time. The fake Martin crashed into the tree behind me, its movements unnaturally, fast but clumsy, like it wasn't used to having arms and legs. "Run!" the real Martin shouted, grabbing a thick branch and swinging it at his double. The branch connected with a wet thud, but the creature barely flinched. Instead, it grabbed the branch and yanked it, pulling Martin off balance. As he stumbled forward, the thing's free hand shot out, fingers stretching longer than any humans should, wrapping around Martin's throat. I couldn't leave him. I gripped my hunting knife and charged, driving the blade deep into the creature's back. It made a sound like nothing I'd ever heard before, part scream, part gurgle, and let go of Martin. A thick, dark fluid that wasn't quite blood oozed from the wound. The fake Martin's face rippled, features momentarily losing their shape before reforming. "Silver!" it hissed, reaching awkwardly behind itself, trying to pull out my knife. "It burns!" My knife wasn't silver, just plain steel. But my grandmother's stories came rushing back. The water spirits she warned about, they feared silver and iron. Martin scrambled away, gasping for breath. "What is that thing?" he wheezed. "Something not human," I said, backing away slowly. "We need to get off this island." The creature had given up trying to reach my knife. Instead, its body seemed to be absorbing the blade, the handle slowly sinking into its back. Its shape was becoming less and less like Martin's, the skin taking on a greenish-grey tone, the fingers elongating into something more like claws. We ran. The underbrush tore at our clothes and skin, but fear pushed us forward. Behind us, I could hear the creature thrashing through the vegetation, following. "There!" Martin pointed ahead. Through the trees, I could see water glinting, the other side of the island. We burst out onto a small, muddy beach. Our boat was nowhere in sight. We must have ended up on the opposite shore from where we'd landed. "We need to find a way back to our boat," I said, scanning the tree line nervously. "I don't think we have time," Martin replied, pointing to movement among the trees. Not one shape, but two, the fake Martin and Eliza, or whatever was wearing. Their forms closing in fast. "We have to swim for it," I decided, though the thought of entering that water terrified me. "Are you crazy? After what happened to Eliza?" "We don't have a choice." I looked around desperately and spotted a fallen cypress branch, long and thick enough to float. "We can use that as a makeshift raft. Come on!" We dragged the branch to the water's edge. It wasn't much, but it might keep us above the surface, long enough to reach another island or the mainland. As we pushed the log into the water, a sound from behind made us turn. The fake Martin emerged from the trees, moving in that strange, fluid way. But something was wrong with it. Its shape seemed to be breaking down, patches of skin revealing something scaly underneath. My knife still protruded from its back, though it had sunk in deeper. "You can't leave," it said, its voice a wet, bubbling sound. "The colony needs you." "The colony," Martin whispered beside me. I didn't wait to hear more. I pushed our makeshift raft further into the water and jumped on. "Come on," Martin followed, almost falling into the water before I grabbed his arm and pulled him onto the branch. We used smaller sticks as makeshift paddles, pushing away from shore as quickly as we could. The fake Martin reached the water's edge, but stopped there, making no move to follow us into the water. It stood watching as we paddled frantically away. "Why isn't it following?" Martin asked between heavy breaths. "I don't know. Maybe they don't like to be seen in the open water during daylight." We paddled in silence for a few minutes, putting distance between us and the island. The log wasn't very stable, and we were getting wetter by the minute, but at least we were moving. Then Martin pointed back. "Look at the water near the shore." I turned to see dark shapes moving just beneath the surface, a lot of them, circling the island like a living barrier. "They're herding us," I realized aloud. "They're not following because they're steering us somewhere else." "Where?" I scanned the horizon, trying to get my bearings. Without my compass or GPS, it was hard to be sure. But there seemed to be a larger island about half a mile ahead of us. "I think they want us to go there." I nodded toward the distant. "Sure. Then we should go a different way," Martin said firmly. "We can't. Look around us." The dark shapes weren't just behind us now. They were on all sides, keeping a distance, but clearly guiding our path. Occasionally, one would surface briefly, a glimpse of scaly skin, a webbed hand, or eyes that reflected light like a cat's. "What are they?" Martin whispered. I shook my head. "I don't know, but I think they've been in this swamp for a very long time." As we drifted closer to the large island, I noticed something strange about it. Parts of it seemed too regular, too geometric to be natural, and there were stone structures visible among the trees, ruins of some kind. "There was never any record of a settlement out this far," I said, more to myself than to Martin. "Maybe it's very old," he suggested. "Pre-colonial." The current grew stronger, pulling us toward the island. Fighting it was useless, so we let ourselves be guided to shore, dragging our log onto a narrow stone beach that was definitely man-made. "Look at these blocks," Martin said, kneeling to examine the shoreline. "This isn't natural. Someone built this landing. But who? And when?" I looked around at the surrounding trees. They'd grown through and around stone structures, some blocks pushed aside by roots over what must have been centuries. A movement caught my eye, a familiar figure standing at the edge of the trees. "Eliza," I whispered, grabbing Martin's arm. She stood watching us, her skin now a mottled green-grey. Her eyes were larger, rounder, with horizontal pupils like a frog's. She didn't speak, just beckoned us to follow before turning and walking into the trees. "We shouldn't follow," Martin said. "I don't think we have a choice," I replied, pointing to the water where dozens of shapes now moved openly, blocking any escape by water. "Besides, I want to know what happened to the real Eliza. Maybe she's still alive somewhere." Martin nodded grimly. "I hope you're right." Together, we walked off the beach and into the trees, following the creature that had once been our friend, deeper into the heart of the ancient island. My name is James Thornton. I'm 38 years old, and I've been a park ranger in these West Virginia mountains for almost 5 years now. Before that, I was a combat medic in Korea. Let me tell you, there are some nights when I still wake up in a cold sweat, the sound of gunfire echoing in my ears. I came to these mountains looking for peace, the kind of peace I couldn't find anywhere else after the war. Today was supposed to be a normal day, just a regular patrol through trails I've walked 100 times before. The fall colors were at their peak. Bright reds, oranges, and yellows painted across the mountains like God himself took a paintbrush to them. The leaves crunched under my boots with each step, and birds sang their happy songs overhead. For a moment, everything felt right in the world. I stopped to take a breath, leaning against an old oak tree. The sunlight filtered through the leaves, dancing on the forest floor. This is why I came here. This feeling, after all the chaos I'd seen, all the men I couldn't save. Nature has a way of making you feel small, but not insignificant, like your troubles matter, but they're just one tiny part of something much bigger. You going to stand there daydreaming all day, Thornton? The voice belonged to Marcus Wilson, a biologist from the university who'd been tagging along with me for the past week. He was studying some strange wildlife patterns in the area. Animals acting weird, birds migrating at the wrong time. Smart. A guy, but city through and through, didn't quite have the respect for these woods that I did. Just appreciating the view, I said, pushing off from the tree. You might try it sometime. Marcus adjusted his heavy backpack full of scientific equipment. I appreciate it plenty. I just do it while walking. I smiled and started moving again, my hand instinctively touching the small wooden compass case. In my pocket. Emily gave it to me on our first anniversary. So, you'll always find your way back to me, she said. Cancer took her 3 years ago, but I still carried that compass everywhere. Somehow, I felt like it was her, still guiding me home. The real reason Marcus and I were out here today wasn't just for his research. Over the past month, 3 separate hiking groups had reported strange lights in the sky around this area. And last week, 2 college students who'd been camping hadn't returned when they were supposed to. Their car was still in the visitor parking. A lot, but there was no sign of them on any of the trails. You really think we'll find those missing hikers? Marcus asked, breaking the silence. If they're out here, we'll find them, I said with more confidence than I felt. The truth was, people who go missing in these mountains don't often come back. The wilderness has a way of swallowing folks whole, but I never stopped looking. It wasn't in my nature to give up, not after everything I'd been through. What about those lights people reported? You think there's anything to that? I shrugged. People see all kinds of things in these woods. Sometimes it's just the moon reflecting off low clouds. Sometimes it's fireflies. And sometimes... I trailed off, remembering the stories my grandfather used to tell. Old mountain tales about things that lived deep in the hollows. Things that weren't quite natural. Sometimes what? Marcus pressed. Nothing, I said, shaking my head. Just old stories. We continued hiking as the afternoon stretched on. The trail narrowed as we moved deeper into the forest, winding through a section where fallen logs and thick undergrowth made walking tough. Marcus was breathing hard, not used to the terrain like I was. How much farther are we going today? He asked between breaths. There's a clearing about 2 miles ahead. Good place to set up camp for the night. We'll reach it before sunset if we keep a steady pace. As I said this, something caught my eye. A movement through the trees. I stopped and held up my hand, signaling Marcus to do the same. What is it? He whispered. Not sure, I murmured. Then I saw it. A fox, its red coat bright against the fallen leaves. It darted across our path about 20 feet ahead, then stopped and turned to look at us. Its gaze was intense, almost like it was trying to tell us something. I'd never seen a fox behave quite like that before. After a moment that seemed to stretch too long, it disappeared into the underbrush. That was weird, Marcus said. Foxes don't usually stop and stare like that. No, I agreed, they don't. An uneasy feeling settled in my stomach. I glanced up at the sky and noticed a bank of fog rolling in from the east, which was strange, because the weather report had promised clear skies all week. Something else caught my attention too. The birds had stopped singing. The forest had gone oddly quiet. I reached for my radio to check in with headquarters, but all I got was static. We were in a valley that usually had clear reception. Having trouble? Marcus asked, noticing my frown. Yeah, I said, clipping the radio back onto my belt. Must be the weather. But I knew it wasn't the weather. Something felt off about these woods today. The air seemed heavier somehow, like it was pressing down on us. A chill ran up my spine that had nothing to do with the autumn breeze. Let's pick up the pace, I said, adjusting my pack. I want to reach that clearing before dark. As we moved. Forward, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched. These mountains had been my home for years. I knew every trail, every ridge, every hollow. But today, for the first time in a long time, I felt like a stranger here. And somewhere deep in my mind, I heard Emily's voice warning me to turn back. But we were already too far down the trail. And I never was good at turning back, even when I should have. The sun was starting to sink lower in the sky. What had been a bright, clear day was turning dim and misty as fog continued to roll in, thicker now. "I don't like this fog," Marcus said, zipping his jacket up to his chin. "Makes it hard to see where we're going." "Just stay close," I told him. "The trail's getting steeper here." We walked in silence for a while, the only sound our boots crunching leaves and the occasional snap of twigs. I kept looking around, trying to place why everything felt so wrong. Then it hit me. We should have reached Willow Creek by now, a small stream that cuts across this trail. But there was no creek in sight. "Something's not right," I muttered, stopping. "In my tracks." "What do you mean?" Marcus asked, his voice tight with worry. I pulled out my map and Emily's compass. The compass needle spun wildly for a moment before settling. According to it, we were heading west, not north like we should have. "That can't be right," I said, tapping the compass. "We've been following the North Ridge Trail." Marcus peered over my shoulder at the map. "Maybe we took a wrong turn?" "No," I shook my head firmly. "I know these trails like the back of my hand. We didn't take any turns." A cold feeling that had nothing to do with the weather crept up my spine. I'd been hiking these mountains for years and had never gotten lost. Not once. "Let's keep moving," I said, trying to sound more confident than I felt. "There's a fire tower, about 2 miles east of here. If we can reach it, we'll be able to see where we are." We picked up our pace, but the fog was getting thicker, closing in around us. It was like walking through a cloud that had fallen to the ground. I could barely. "See 20 feet ahead? James?" Marcus's voice was low. "Look at this!" He was pointing at the ground. There in a patch of soft mud was a footprint, but not like any I'd seen before. It was huge, at least 15 inches long, and shaped almost like a human foot, but with long, claw-like toes at the end. "What kind of animal makes a print like that?" Marcus asked, already pulling out his camera. "None that I know of," I admitted, kneeling down to look closer. The print was deep, meaning whatever made it was heavy. Could be a bear with a deformed paw, maybe. But I didn't believe that. "Not really. Bears don't walk on 2 legs for long distances, and these tracks continued in a straight line, evenly spaced like a person walking." The wind picked up suddenly, sending dead leaves swirling around us. And with the wind came a smell, metallic and sharp, like blood mixed with something chemical. It burned my nose. "You smell that?" I asked. Marcus nodded, covering his nose with his sleeve. "What is it?" "I don't know." I tried the radio again, desperate to reach headquarters. There was a burst of static, then something that made my blood run cold. What sounded like whispers coming through the speaker, faint, distorted human voices. "James." It was barely audible, but I heard my name in the static. I quickly switched the radio off, my hands shaking slightly. "Did you hear that?" Marcus asked, his eyes wide. I nodded, not trusting myself to speak. I'd heard radios malfunction before, but never like that. Never in a way that seemed so deliberate. "Let's go," I said, my voice harder than I intended. "We need to find that tower before dark." We moved faster now, the easy hiking pace replaced by something more urgent. The trail seemed to be changing, getting more overgrown with each step. Branches reached out like fingers, scraping against our clothes. "James, stop!" Marcus called from behind me. "Look at your watch." I glanced down at my wristwatch, confused at first about what he meant. Then I saw it. The second hand was moving backward, ticking counterclockwise. "That's impossible," I whispered, tapping the glass face. "My phone's doing weird things too," Marcus said, holding up his cell. The screen was glitching, numbers and letters flashing randomly. And the battery's almost dead. It was fully charged this morning. That cold feeling was spreading through my whole body now. Something was very wrong in these woods. I'd heard stories from old-timers about places in the mountains where strange things happened, patches of forest where compasses didn't work and people disappeared. I'd always thought they were just tales to scare tourists. Now I wasn't so sure. "We need to keep moving," I said, putting my map away since it wasn't helping anymore. "Stay close to me." The light was fading fast now, though it wasn't quite sunset. Yet, it was like the forest itself was growing darker, shadows stretching longer than they should. That's when we found the campsite. It was tucked in a small clearing just off the trail, a tent, a portable stove, and gear scattered around as if the campers had left in a hurry. A pot still sat on the stove. Whatever had been cooking now burned beyond recognition. "This might be from those missing hikers," I said, approaching cautiously. The tent flap was open, waving slightly in the breeze. Inside, sleeping bags were unrolled. A lantern was tipped on its side, and personal items were strewn about. A book lay open, pages fluttering, a half-empty water bottle, a cell phone. "Why would they leave all their gear?" Marcus asked, picking up the phone. "Dead," he reported after trying to turn it on. I didn't answer. I was looking at something else, deep scratch marks on a nearby tree. They were at least 8 feet up the trunk, cutting through the bark like it was paper. Something dark and sticky oozed from the gouges, but it wasn't sap. "It was too dark, too thick, Marcus," I called softly, not taking my eyes off the marks. "What could make scratches like these?" He came over, scientific curiosity momentarily overriding his fear. "Not a bear," he said after studying them. "The pattern's wrong. Bears swipe with their whole paw. These are individual marks, almost like fingers." "Or claws," I added. The silence that followed was broken only by the sound of our breathing. Even the wind had died down, leaving the forest unnaturally still. "We should take some of this gear," I said finally. "The nights get cold up here. Whoever was camping might need help." We quickly gathered what seemed useful: a flashlight, some energy bars, a first aid kit, and a spare blanket. I left a note in the tent explaining who we were and where we were headed, though I doubted now that we'd actually make it to the fire tower before nightfall. As we prepared to leave the clearing, Marcus grabbed my arm. "Listen," he whispered. I held my breath, straining my ears. At first I heard nothing, then faintly from somewhere in the distance, a sound like large wings beating the air. Slow, powerful strokes that seemed to echo through the trees. "Could be an owl," I suggested, not believing it for a second. "That's no owl," Marcus said, his voice trembling slightly. The sound grew louder, then faded, as if whatever was making. It had flown past us and continued deeper into the forest. "Let's go," I said, reaching for my service revolver. I hadn't expected to need it today, but now I was glad for its familiar weight at my side. "And stay alert." As we left the abandoned campsite, I couldn't shake the feeling that we were being watched, that something was following our every move, studying us, waiting for the right moment. The darkness was closing in, and with it came a bone-deep certainty that the night ahead would be unlike any I'd ever faced in these mountains. What had started as a routine patrol was turning into something much more dangerous, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I heard Emily's voice again. "Be careful, James. Some things in this world are beyond understanding." If only I'd listened. Night fell faster than it should have. One minute there was still some light filtering through the trees, and the next we were in almost complete darkness. I clicked on my flashlight, and Marcus did the same. The 2 beams cut through the blackness. But somehow the darkness seemed to swallow the light more quickly than normal. "We need to find shelter," I said, my breath visible in the cold air. The temperature had dropped at least 20 degrees in the last hour. "We're not going to make it to the fire tower tonight." "What about that ridge up there?" Marcus pointed to a rocky outcropping about 50 yards ahead. "We'd be able to see in all directions, at least." It was a good suggestion. Being in the open would give us better visibility than staying among the dense trees. We started climbing, the slope getting steeper as we went. The rocks were slippery with early evening dew, and more than once we had to grab onto roots and branches to keep from sliding back down. Halfway up, we found the deer. It was lying on a flat section of rock, its body unnaturally arranged, as if it had been placed there deliberately. As we got closer, my stomach turned. The deer had been cut open from neck to tail, but not like an animal would do it. The cuts were clean, precise, surgical even, and the organs were gone. "What could do this?" Marcus whispered, his scientific detachment failing him for the first time. I'd seen plenty of animals killed by predators. Bears, mountain lions, wolves, they all leave distinct marks. This wasn't like any of them. This was methodical, intentional. "We should keep moving," I said, not wanting to stay near the carcass any longer than necessary. We continued up the ridge, finally reaching the top a few minutes later. From here, we could see for miles in every direction, or we would have, if not for the fog. It hung in patches throughout the forest, glowing faintly in the moonlight like ghostly islands in a dark sea. "Look," Marcus said suddenly, pointing to the northeast. "Lights." Sure enough, there were lights visible through a gap in the trees. Not flashlights or campfires, but a strange, pulsing glow that seemed to hover about 20 feet off the ground. As we watched, the lights moved, drifting slowly through the forest in a way that no human or vehicle could manage. "What is that?" Marcus asked, already reaching for his camera. "I don't know," I admitted, "but it might explain those reports from hikers." Marcus snapped a few photos, but when he checked the display, he frowned. "They're not showing up. Just looks like darkness." A twig snapped somewhere below us, followed by the sound of something heavy moving through the underbrush. We both froze, listening intently. Whatever it was big, and it was circling the base of our ridge. I drew my revolver, holding it at my side. "Hello?" I called out. "Anyone there?" No answer came, but the movement stopped. The silence that followed was worse than the noise. "Maybe it was a deer," Marcus suggested hopefully. I shook my head. "Deer don't move like that." We waited, tense and alert, but nothing happened. After a few minutes, I started to think maybe it had moved on. Then, from directly behind us, came a sound that made my blood freeze, the beating of enormous wings, so close I could feel the air move against my back. We spun around, flashlights raised, and for a split second, our lights caught something that shouldn't exist, a massive winged figure, at least 7 feet tall, hovering just beyond the edge of the ridge. Its eyes reflected our flashlights back at us, glowing red like hot coals. Marcus screamed. I couldn't. My throat had closed up with pure, primal fear. The thing, because I couldn't bring myself to call it a creature, moved with impossible speed, darting up into the night sky before our lights could fully capture it. But I'd seen enough. The wings had to span at least 10 feet. The body was humanoid but wrong somehow, the proportions all off. And those eyes, did you see that? Marcus's voice was high and tight with panic. "Yeah," I managed to say. "I saw it." "What was it?" "I don't know, but a name came to my mind unbidden. Stories I'd heard from locals, tales I'd dismissed as superstition and folklore. The Mothman. A winged creature said to appear before disasters, a harbinger of tragedy. I'd laughed at those stories once. I wasn't laughing now. "We need to find better shelter," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "Somewhere with walls." Marcus nodded, too frightened to speak. We scanned the surrounding area with our flashlights, looking for any sign of a cabin or structure. Nothing. "There used to be an old hunter's shack about half a mile from here," I said, trying to orient myself. "If it's still standing, it would give us some protection." We started down the other side of the ridge, moving as quickly as we dared in the darkness. Every sound made us jump. The hoot of an owl, the rustling of leaves in the wind. Our flashlight beams bounced wildly as we half walked, half ran through the trees. That's when I heard it. My name called softly from somewhere in the darkness. James. I stopped so abruptly that Marcus bumped into me from behind. Did you hear that? I whispered. Hear what? I listened again, but there was nothing. Maybe I'd imagined it. We continued on, but a minute later it came again. James, help me. This time Marcus heard it too. His face went pale in the flashlight's glow. Who's out there? He called, his voice shaking. No answer came, just the soft sound of something moving through the trees parallel to our path. Whatever it was pacing us, staying just out of sight. Ignore it, I said through gritted teeth. Keep moving. But the voice came again, and this time my heart nearly stopped. Because it wasn't just any voice, it was Emily's. James. Why did you let me die alone? My legs almost gave out beneath me. Emily's voice, her exact voice, with that slight catch she always had when she was upset. But Emily was dead. 3 years dead. What is this? I whispered, more to myself than to Marcus. It's messing with your head, Marcus said, grabbing my arm. Whatever that thing is, it's trying to get inside our minds. We can't listen to it. He was right. I steadied myself, forcing the sound of Emily's voice out of my head. The shack should be just ahead, I said, pointing my flashlight forward. We pushed on, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. The voice, Emily's voice, called out a few more times, but I steeled myself against it. It wasn't her. It couldn't be her. Finally, we spotted the shack, a small dilapidated structure made of rough-hewn logs. It was clearly abandoned, with part of the roof caved in, but most of it was still intact. It would have to do. We hurried inside, closing the creaky wooden door behind us. The interior was musty and cold, with old furniture covered in years of dust and cobwebs. A small fireplace stood against one wall, and I immediately set about gathering the few dry pieces of wood that remained. We need to get a fire going, I said, pulling matches from my pack, for light as much as warmth. Marcus helped, his hands shaking so badly he could barely hold the kindling. Eventually, we got a small fire started, the flames casting dancing shadows on the walls. What was that thing, James? Marcus asked as we huddled near the fire. I've never seen anything like it. I hesitated, not wanting to sound crazy. But after what we'd both seen, crazy seemed relative. The locals call it the Mothman, I said quietly. It's supposed to be some kind of omen. It appears before tragedies happen. Marcus stared at me. You believe in that stuff? I didn't, I admitted. Not until today. We fell silent, listening to the fire crackle and the wind moan through the trees outside. Every now and then, I thought I heard something moving around the shack, circling it, but I tried to convince myself it was just the wind. Then came a sound from directly above us. Heavy footsteps on the roof. Dust and debris rained down as something large moved across the damaged structure. The roof groaned under the weight. Marcus and I looked at each other, the same thought in both our minds. The roof was already weakened. If that thing came through, the footsteps stopped directly above where we sat. For a long, terrible moment, nothing happened. Then slowly, a face appeared at the single small window. Not pressed against it, but hovering outside, peering in. It wasn't human. The head was too large, too round. Where there should have been a mouth, there was only smooth skin, and the eyes, 2 enormous red orbs that seemed to glow from within. I raised my gun, pointing it at the window. "Get back!" I shouted. The face didn't move. The eyes blinked once, slowly, deliberately. Then, as if responding to my threat, it raised one enormous, clawed hand and placed it against the glass. The window frosted over instantly, ice crystals spreading from where it touched. Marcus made a choking sound beside me. I grabbed his arm, pulling him away from the window. The door, I hissed. We need to run. But before we could move, every window in the shack frosted over at once, sealing us inside. The temperature plummeted, our breath forming thick clouds in front of our faces. The fire flickered and died, plunging us into darkness except for our faltering flashlights. What's happening? Marcus's voice was barely audible, terror making it a whisper. It's trying to trap us, I said, fumbling in my pack for the flares I'd brought along. But we're not going to let it. I found a flare and struck it, the bright red light filling the shack with an eerie glow. In that light I saw something that made my heart skip a beat. Claw marks appearing on the inside walls, carving themselves into the wood as we watched. They formed words. I know what you fear. Jamesy fired my gun at the window, shattering the glass. Run! I shouted to Marcus. Now! We burst through the doorway, the frigid air outside feeling almost warm compared to the unnatural cold of the shack. We ran blindly, the flare in my hand casting wild shadows through the trees. Behind us, I heard the sound of the shack's roof finally collapsing, and then the beating of massive wings. It was coming for us, and somehow I knew it wasn't going to stop until it had what it wanted. We ran through the forest, the red glow. From my flare, our only light now. Our flashlights had died completely, their batteries drained by whatever strange force was at work in these woods. My lungs burned with each breath of the freezing air, but fear kept us moving. We need to get to higher ground, I gasped between breaths. The fire tower. It's our only chance. Marcus nodded, too winded to speak. His face was scratched from branches we'd crashed through, a thin line of blood running down his cheek. The sound of wings followed us, sometimes closer, sometimes farther away, as if the thing was toying with us, playing a game of cat and mouse. Suddenly Marcus grabbed my arm, pulling me to a stop. Wait, he wheezed. Listen. I paused, straining my ears. At first I heard nothing but our ragged breathing and the distant wing beats. Then I caught it. The sound of running water. A river. That's Blackwater River, I said, hope rising in my chest. If we can cross it, we might have a chance. The fire tower is just on the other side. We changed direction, heading toward the sound of water. The forest was thinning out slightly, making it easier to move quickly. The flare was starting to sputter, its light dimming. We'd have to cross the river in near darkness. The wing beats grew louder, closer. Whatever game the creature had been playing, it seemed to be ending. It was coming for us now with purpose. We broke through the tree line and saw the river below us, a dark ribbon cutting through the forest. The bank was steep here, dropping about 15 feet to the water's edge. We'll have to climb down, I said, scanning the slope for the safest route. That's when the voice came again, not Emily's this time, but Marcus's mother. Marcus, it called softly from the darkness behind us. Marcus, honey, come home. Marcus froze, his eyes wide with shock. Mom, he whispered. That's not your mother, I said firmly, grabbing his shoulder. Your mother is in Boston, remember? You told me yourself. But Marcus wasn't listening. His eyes had a glazed, distant look, as if he was seeing something I couldn't. Mom, he said again, turning back toward the forest. I'm coming. Marcus, no. I tried to hold him back, but he pulled away with surprising strength. It's tricking you. He took a step toward the trees, then another. Behind him, the darkness seemed to deepen, and I caught a glimpse of those glowing red eyes, watching, waiting. Marcus, I shouted, desperation in my voice. That's not your mother. Too late. Marcus broke into a run, heading straight for the trees. And the thing waiting. In them. I tried to follow, but my foot caught on a root, and I went down hard, tumbling painfully down the steep bank toward the river. I grabbed at anything I could to stop my fall, roots, rocks, branches, but the ground was too slick with dew. I hit the water with a splash that knocked the breath from my lungs. The river was ice cold and moving fast, immediately pulling me downstream. My heavy boots and clothes dragged me down, and for a moment I thought I might drown. But years of survival training kicked in, and I managed to keep my head above water, kicking toward the opposite bank. As I fought against the current, I heard a scream from somewhere in the forest behind me, a human scream of pure terror. Marcus wanted to turn back to help him, but the river was too strong. And deep down, I knew it was already too late. The scream cut off abruptly, replaced by a sound I'll never forget. A wet, tearing noise, followed by something that might have been laughter, but wasn't human at all. The river carried me around a bend, and I lost sight of the bank where I'd fallen in. The cold was seeping into my bones now, making my limbs feel heavy and clumsy. If I didn't get out of the water soon, hypothermia would finish what the creature had started. I spotted a fallen tree jutting into the river ahead and made for it with my last bit of strength. My fingers, numb with cold, somehow managed to grab onto the rough bark. I pulled myself out of the water, crawling onto the riverbank like some half-drowned animal. For a long moment, I just lay there, coughing up river water, shivering violently. My pack was gone, lost in the river. All I had left was my revolver, still somehow in its holster, and Emily's compass in my pocket. I pulled out the compass with trembling hands. The needle spun wildly at first, then settled, pointing steadily north. Whatever strange forces had been affecting it before seemed weaker here, on this side of the river. Looking up, I could just make out a dark shape against the night sky. The fire tower, about half a mile away on top of a hill. If I could reach it, I might survive the night. There would be a radio there, emergency supplies, maybe even a weapon more useful than my 6-shot revolver. I forced myself to my feet, wincing at the pain in my right leg. I'd gashed it open on something during my fall, a rock or a submerged branch. Blood soaked my pant leg, warm against the freezing fabric. I tore a strip from my shirt and tied it around the wound as best I could. It would have to do. As I stumbled toward the tower, I couldn't stop thinking about Marcus. Had he really heard his mother's voice? Or was it the creature, somehow reaching into his mind, finding his deepest vulnerabilities? And why had it let me escape? Was it because I'd crossed the river? Or was it just not finished with me yet? The climb up to the fire tower was the hardest physical thing I've ever done. My injured leg threatened to give out with every step. The cold made my whole body shake so badly I could barely keep moving forward. But fear is a powerful motivator, and the memory of those red eyes watching from the darkness pushed me on. Finally, I reached the base of the tower. It rose about 60 feet into the air, a simple metal structure with a small cabin at the top. I began to climb the stairs that spiraled around the outside, each step an agony with my injured leg. Halfway up, I paused to rest, leaning against the railing. That's when I saw it, the creature, standing at the edge of the forest watching me. Even from this distance, I could see those glowing red eyes. It made no move to follow me, just stood there, observing, waiting for what I didn't know. And I didn't want to find out. I forced myself to keep climbing until I reached the cabin door. It was locked, but in my desperation, I shot off the padlock with my revolver. 5 bullets left. The interior of the cabin was small but well equipped. A desk with a radio, a cot, first aid supplies, emergency rations. I immediately went for the radio, turning it on and grabbing the microphone. "Mayday, Mayday," I called, my voice hoarse. "This is Park Ranger James Thornton. I'm at the Northeast Fire Tower. I need immediate assistance." "Over," static answered me, but beneath it I thought I heard a human voice. I tried again. "Mayday, this is Ranger Thornton. There's been an attack. My companion is missing. I'm injured. Need immediate evac." "Over." More static. Then finally a clear voice broke through. "Thornton, this is dispatch. We've been looking for you for hours. What's your situation?" "Over." Relief flooded through me at the sound of a human voice. "I need a helicopter evac at first light," I said. "There's something in these woods. It killed Marcus Wilson. I trailed off, suddenly aware of how crazy I would sound... Say again, Thornton. Did you say Wilson is dead? Over. Affirmative, I replied, choosing my next words carefully. We were attacked. I don't know what it was. Some kind of predator. Wilson is gone. I'm injured but safe for now in the fire tower, but I need to get out of here by morning. Over. There was a long pause before dispatch responded. Understood. Weather's too bad for a helicopter tonight, but we'll send one at first light. Can you hold position until dawn? Over. I looked out the window at the dark forest below. The creature was no longer visible at the tree line, but I had no doubt it was still out there. I'll have to, I said grimly. Just make sure that helicopter comes. Over and out. I put down the microphone and limped over to the first aid kit. Inside, I found everything I needed to properly clean and bandage my leg wound. It was deep, but had mostly stopped bleeding. I wouldn't be running any races, but I wouldn't bleed to death either. After taking care of my leg, I locked the door as best I could with the broken padlock and dragged the desk in front of it for good measure. Then I checked all the windows, making sure they were securely latched. Only then did I allow myself to sink down onto the cot, exhaustion washing over me in waves. But I couldn't sleep. Not with that thing out there. Not knowing what had happened to Marcus, I sat with my back against the wall, revolver in hand, staring at the door. Hours passed. The wind picked up, rattling the windows of the small cabin. Occasionally, I'd hear strange sounds from the forest. Below, unnatural calls that weren't made by any animal I knew. Once, I could have sworn I heard Marcus calling my name, begging for help. I gripped the revolver tighter and told myself it wasn't real. Around 3 in the morning, something landed on the roof. The whole tower shook with the impact. Dust rained down from the ceiling. Heavy footsteps moved across the roof directly above my head. Tap, 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 deliberate, measured, like it wanted me to know it was there. Then came the scratching, long, slow scrapes against the metal roof, the sound of enormous claws dragging across the surface. I raised my gun, pointing it at the ceiling, though I knew it would do little good. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold the weapon. The scratching stopped. For a long moment, there was complete silence. Then something hit the window. Not breaking it, just a light tap. I turned slowly, already knowing what I would see. The creature hung outside the window, its wings spread wide against the night sky. It wasn't flying exactly, more like it was clinging to the side of the tower. Up close, I could see details I'd missed before. Its skin was a dark, mottled grey, like the colour of storm clouds. Its wings weren't feathered like a bird's, but leathery like a bat's, with visible veins running through them. And its face, God, its face, where features should have been, there was only smooth skin with those terrible red eyes. It raised one clawed hand and pressed it to the glass. Ice crystals immediately began to form, spreading across the window. But this time it didn't just stop there. The glass began to crack under the pressure, hairline fractures spiderwebbing outward from its hand. I raised my gun and fired. The bullet hit the window, shattering it completely, but the creature was already gone, moving with that impossible speed. I heard the beating of its wings as it circled the tower, looking for another way in. More scratching, this time at the door. The desk I'd pushed against it began to move, sliding inch by inch across the floor as something pushed from the other side. I fired again, putting a bullet through the door. A shriek came from outside, not pain, but rage. The pushing stopped, but I could still hear it moving around the tower, testing each window, each possible entrance. It was smart, too smart. This wasn't an animal acting on instinct. This was something that could think, plan, adapt. My radio crackled to life suddenly, making me jump. I expected to hear dispatch, but instead Emily's voice came through the speaker. "James, why did you let me die alone?" I threw the radio across the room, smashing it against the wall. "You're not her," I shouted. "She's gone." A laugh came from outside, a horrible sound that was almost human but not quite. Then the tower began to shake, not from wind, but because something was hitting it, ramming into the support beams below. The whole structure swayed dangerously. It was trying to bring down the tower. I staggered to the window, looking down. In the faint moonlight, I could see the creature flying in tight circles around the base of the tower, striking the metal supports. Each time it passed, the tower groaned and shuddered with each impact. Another hit, harder this time. The floor tilted beneath my feet. A support beam must have given way. If it broke another, the whole thing would come crashing down. I had to do something. I couldn't just wait to fall to my death or face that thing on the ground. I had 2 bullets left. Not enough to kill it, but maybe enough to drive it off until dawn. Looking around desperately, I spotted a locker I hadn't noticed before. Inside were emergency flares, bigger, brighter ones than the hand flare I'd used earlier. An idea formed. The creature hit the tower again. The floor tilted more severely now. Time was running out. I grabbed 3 flares and went to the broken window below. I could see the creature circling for another attack. I struck the first flare, the bright red light illuminating the entire clearing. Then I threw it as far as I could into the trees. The creature immediately changed course, drawn to the sudden light. Just as I'd hoped, it seemed attracted to bright objects. I struck the second flare and threw it in the opposite direction. The creature paused in midair, its attention divided between the 2 burning lights. I struck the third flare, but held onto it, waving it back and forth. "Come on," I muttered. "Come get me." The creature turned toward the tower, those red eyes fixed on the flare in my hand. It began to fly toward me, picking up speed. I waited until the last possible moment, then threw the flare directly at it. The burning stick hit the creature square in the face. It shrieked, a sound so loud and terrible it seemed to shake the very air. Then it veered away, wings beating frantically, disappearing into the darkness beyond the tree line. I sagged against the wall, relief making my legs weak. But I knew it wasn't over. The flares had bought me some time, nothing more, and the tower was still damaged, tilting precariously. I checked my watch. 4:30 a.m., less than 2 hours until dawn. If I could hold out until then, the helicopter would come. I just had to survive until morning. Sat down on the floor, my back against the wall, gun in hand. Every noise made me flinch. The creak of metal, the whisper of wind. But the creature didn't return. As the first grey light of dawn appeared on the horizon, I finally allowed myself to believe I might actually survive. The tower was damaged, but still standing. The forest was quiet, and soon help would arrive. Limped to the doorway, looking out at the lightening sky. In the distance, I heard the most beautiful sound imaginable, the thump, thump, thump of helicopter blades cutting through the air. But as I turned to go back inside and gather what few belongings I had left, I caught movement from the corner of my eye. Something large moving through the trees at the edge of the clearing. It was still there, watching, waiting. And somehow I knew with absolute certainty this wasn't over, not by a long shot. The Mothman had marked me, and one day it would come for me again. The helicopter found me just after sunrise. I remember the bright searchlight sweeping across the clearing, the relief on the faces of the rescue team when they spotted me waving from the damaged tower. I remember being lifted into the helicopter, someone wrapping a blanket around my shaking shoulders, voices asking questions I couldn't focus enough to answer. What I remember most clearly is looking down as we rose into the air, scanning the forest edge one last time. And there it was, a dark figure standing just inside the tree line, those red eyes tilted upward, watching me escape. No one else saw it. Or if they did, they didn't say anything. They took me to the hospital in Charleston. My leg needed 27 stitches. I had hypothermia, exhaustion, and what the doctors called acute stress reaction. What normal people call shock. I told them about Marcus, about how we'd been separated, how I heard him scream. Search teams went into the forest, but found nothing. No body, no blood, no sign that Marcus Wilson had ever been there at all. They found the abandoned campsite, though, just as we'd left it, and they found strange, large footprints that no one could identify exactly where I said they would be. After a week in the hospital, the Park Service sent in a psychologist to talk to me. Dr. Levine, a kind-faced woman with patient eyes who sat by my bed and asked me to tell her everything that happened. I did. I told her about the creature, about the voice that sounded like Emily, about the tower, all of it. She nodded and took notes and didn't once tell me I was crazy, but I could see it in her eyes. She didn't believe me. No one did. They had their own explanation. A bear attack. Marcus was dead, killed by a rogue black bear driven to unusual aggression by hunger before the winter hibernation. I had escaped, and traumatized by witnessing my friend's death, my mind had created a more fantastic explanation. I was placed on medical leave. Take some time, my supervisor said. Rest, process what happened. What he meant was, get your head straight, Thornton. Come back when you're ready to admit it was just a bear. They gave me pills to help me sleep, but I didn't take them. I couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw those red eyes staring back at me. I heard Marcus screaming. I heard Emily's voice calling my name. I went back to my cabin on the edge of the park. It was small but comfortable, a place that had always felt safe before. Now I checked the locks 3 times every night. I kept the lights on. I jumped at every sound, the crack of a branch in the wind, the call of an owl, the normal settling. Noises old cabins make at night. I tried to write down what happened, to make sense of it all. My journal became my only companion. Page after page, filled with my increasingly desperate handwriting, descriptions of the creature, theories about what it was and why it had let me live. Sometimes I'd find myself writing the same sentence over and over. It's coming back for me. It's coming back for me. It's coming back for me. 2 weeks after I came home, the dreams started. Not nightmares. I was ready for those. These were worse because they felt so real. I would dream I was back, in the forest, but everything was normal, peaceful. Emily was with me, walking beside me, her hand in mine. We'd talk about simple things, plans for dinner, a movie we wanted to see, everyday stuff. Then she would turn to me, smile sadly and say, "You know I'm not really here, James." And her eyes would turn red. I'd wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, convinced the creature was in the room with me. Once I fired my gun at a shadow on the wall before realizing it was just the moonlight through the trees outside my window. The Park Service called once a week to check on me. "How are you feeling, Thornton?" "Fine," I'd say. "Getting better, sleeping more, all lies." I started seeing things, a winged shadow passing over the moon, red eyes watching from the trees at the edge of my property. I heard noises on my roof at night, scratching sounds like enormous claws dragging across the shingles. I told myself it wasn't real, that my mind was playing tricks on me. A month after the incident, they found Marcus's backpack washed up on the banks of the Blackwater River, 5 miles downstream from where I'd fallen in. Inside was his camera. The memory card was damaged, but the tech guys managed to recover some images. Most were just normal photos of the forest, plants, wildlife, the kind of things a biologist would take. But the last photo showed something the tech couldn't explain. A dark, blurry shape with what looked like enormous wings captured just at the edge of the frame. Probably a smudge on the lens, the tech said, or a bird that flew into the shot. But I knew better. They never found Marcus's body. After 6 weeks, the search was officially called off. His parents held a memorial service in Boston. I didn't go. I couldn't face them, couldn't look them in the eyes, knowing I'd left their son behind. Around the same time, hikers in the park started reporting strange lights in the sky, particularly near the area where Marcus and I had been. The same area, where the college students had gone missing weeks earlier. Their bodies were never found either. 2 months after my encounter, I heard a local man lost his little girl in the woods, not far from my cabin. She'd wandered away from a family picnic, disappeared in the time it took her father to pack up their cooler. The search party looked for 3 days. They found her on the 4th morning, sitting calmly at the base of a large oak tree, perfectly fine except for being a bit hungry and dehydrated, when they asked her what happened where she'd been. All that time, she said, a big angel with red eyes had protected her, kept her warm at night. The parents thought she was confused, that her young mind had created a guardian angel to cope with being lost and afraid. I knew better. Why had it protected the child but killed Marcus? Why had it let me escape? These questions haunted me day and night. I couldn't eat, I couldn't sleep. I lost 20 pounds in 2 months. When I looked in the mirror, I barely recognized the gaunt, haunted man staring back at me. 3 months after my encounter, I made a decision. I couldn't live like this anymore, jumping at shadows, waiting for the creature to come for me. One way or another, I had to end it. I packed a backpack with supplies, my journal, Emily's compass, food, water, a flashlight, and my gun with all the ammunition I had left. Then I headed back into the forest, back to the place where it all began. The hike took most of the day. The forest felt different now, quiet, watchful, as if it knew why I had returned. As the sun began to set, I reached the ridge where Marcus and I had first seen the creature. I sat down on a flat rock and waited, my gun in my lap, Emily's compass in my hand. Darkness fell. Nothing happened. No red eyes watched from the trees. No wings beat in the night sky. Just the normal sounds of the forest at night, crickets chirping, owls calling, the rustle of small animals in the underbrush. Around midnight I dozed off, exhaustion finally catching up to me. I woke to the sound of my name being called. James. Emily's voice coming from somewhere in the darkness, beyond my flashlight's beam. "You're not real," I said, my voice steady. "You're not Emily." "No," the voice agreed, but it still used Emily's soft tones. "But I know what you want, James. I can give her back to you." A figure stepped into the light. Emily, exactly as she'd been before the cancer took her. Healthy, smiling, beautiful, she held out her hand to me. "Come with me, James. We can be together again." For a moment, just a moment, I wanted to believe it. Wanted it so badly I could taste it, to hold her again, to hear her laugh. But then I saw the eyes. Red eyes, glowing in Emily's gentle face. A monster wearing my dead wife's skin like a costume. "No," I said firmly, "you're not her, and I'm not afraid of you anymore." The thing wearing Emily's face tilted its head, studying me. "Then why did you come back?" "To end this," I said, raising my gun. "One way or another." The creature laughed, not with Emily's voice anymore, but with that terrible, not quite human sound I remembered from the fire tower. "You cannot kill me, James Thornton," it said. "I am not alive as you understand it." "Then what are you?" I asked. "Why did you kill Marcus? Why did you let me go? Why did you save that little girl?" The Emily thing smiled, but the expression was all wrong on her face. "Too wide, too many teeth. I am what I need to be," it said. "Death to some, salvation to others." "And what are you to me?" I asked, my finger tightening on the trigger. "A lesson," it said. "A reminder that there are things in this world beyond your understanding. Beyond anyone's understanding." The creature stepped closer, still wearing Emily's own face, but moving all wrong, like it wasn't used to a human body. "I let you live because you needed to tell the story," it said, "and now you have." It gestured to my journal, which lay open on the rock beside me. "But no one believes me," I said bitterly. "Not yet," it agreed. "But they will, when the bridge falls, when the waters rise, when many die at once. They will remember your warning." A chill ran through me. "What bridge? What are you talking about?" But the creature was already changing, Emily's features melting away, revealing that smooth, featureless face with its terrible red eyes. Wings unfolded from its back, stretching wide against the night sky. "Your part is finished, James Thornton," it said. its voice no longer Emily's, but something ancient and cold. You may go now, live, die. It matters not to me. With that, it rose into the air, wings beating with that impossible silence. In moments it was gone, just a dark shape against the stars, then nothing at all. I sat there until dawn, gun in hand, waiting for it to return. It didn't. That was 3 days ago. I've been writing since then, finishing this account, making sure every detail is recorded. The Park Service called yesterday. They want me to come in to talk about returning to work. They think I'm better. I'm not better. I'll never be better. Because I know the truth now. The creature, the Mothman, whatever it is, it let me live for a reason. To be a warning that no one will heed. A prophet no one will believe until it's too late. Last night, I dreamed of a bridge collapsing, of dozens of cars falling into icy water, of people drowning in the darkness. I woke up knowing it wasn't just a dream, it was a vision. It's going to happen, and there's nothing I can do to stop it. So I'm leaving this journal where it will be found. I've sealed it in a waterproof bag and addressed it to the Park Service. Maybe after it happens, after the bridge falls and people die, maybe then someone will read these words and understand. Maybe then they'll be ready when the Mothman appears again. As for me, I can't live with these visions anymore. Can't live knowing what's coming and being powerless to prevent it. Can't live with the sound of Emily's voice calling to me every night, with the memory of Marcus's screams, with those red eyes watching me from the darkness. By the time anyone reads this, I'll be gone. I've cleaned my gun. It's sitting beside me as I write these final words. 1 bullet, that's all it will take to end the nightmares. Emily, if there's anything after this life, I hope you're there waiting for me. The real you, not the thing that wore your face. To whoever finds this journal, remember my warning. When you see the red eyes watching from the shadows, run. Run as far and as fast as you can, because the Mothman is real, and it's coming. James Thornton, October 15th, 1957, editor's note. This journal was found in the personal effects of James Thornton following his death by suicide on October 16th, 1957. Less than 2 months later, on December 15th, 1957, the Silver Bridge, connecting Point Pleasant, West Virginia and Gallipolis, Ohio, collapsed during rush hour traffic, killing 46 people. In the weeks leading up to the disaster, multiple residents reported sightings of a large, winged creature with glowing red eyes in the vicinity of the bridge. These sightings, along with Thornton's journal, formed the basis of what is now known as the Mothman legend. Similar sightings have been reported before other tragedies around the world in the decades since, leading some to believe that the creature Thornton encountered continues to appear as a harbinger of disaster to this day. My name is Evelyn Hawkins. I'm a ranger at Glacier National Park in Montana, and this is the story of what happened to me last winter. I'm writing this down because I need someone to know the truth, to understand what's really out there in the wilderness when the snow falls deep. It all started on a day that should have been like any other. I woke up before dawn in my small cabin, made some strong coffee, and got ready for my patrol. The weather report called for clear skies, but something about the air that morning felt heavy. I've lived in these mountains long enough to trust my gut when it comes to the weather. I packed extra supplies anyway. Better safe than sorry. By mid-morning, I was deep in the park, surrounded by snow-covered pine trees. Their branches hung low, heavy with fresh powder from the storm we'd had overnight. I've always loved how quiet the forest gets after a snowfall, like the whole world is holding its breath. I moved slowly on my snowshoes, making my way through familiar trails. The winter sun broke through the trees, making the snow sparkle like someone had scattered diamonds across the ground. On days like this, I remembered why I chose this life, despite everything it had cost me. Beautiful day, I said to myself. watching my breath turn to clouds in the cold air. The thermometer on my pack read 15 degrees, but it felt colder somehow. I pulled my scarf tighter around my neck and kept moving. That's when I heard it. A wolf howl echoing across the valley. Normally this wouldn't bother me at all. Wolves are just part of life here. But something about this call sent a shiver down my spine that had nothing to do with the cold. It sounded wrong, too long, too high-pitched. Not quite a wolf, but something trying to sound like one. I shook off the feeling and kept walking, but found myself checking my radio more often than usual. Headquarters was only responding with static, which was strange, even for this remote section of the park. Usually, I could at least get a broken signal. "Ranger Hawkins checking in," I said into the radio. "Anyone copy?" Nothing but crackling static. Answered back. I'd been walking for about 3 hours when I noticed the sun was already starting to dip behind the mountain peaks. It was barely 2 p.m., way too early for sunset this time of year. Long blue shadows stretched across the snow, making the familiar landscape look alien and unwelcoming. As I rounded a bend in the trail, a snowshoe hare burst from a thicket and darted across my path. The poor thing was moving so frantically it nearly tripped over itself. I'd seen plenty of hares before, but they were usually just cautious. This one looked terrified, as if something was chasing it. I turned to look back the way it had come, but saw nothing but empty forest. That's when I noticed the clouds gathering overhead. Dark and heavy, they rolled in from the north at a speed that didn't seem natural. The weather report had promised clear skies all week, but this looked like a serious blizzard brewing. In Montana, weather can change fast, but not this fast. The trail ahead led through a mountain pass known for avalanches. We'd lost hikers there before. Good, experienced, people who'd made one small mistake. In normal conditions, I could navigate it safely, but with a storm coming, that was a different story. I stopped walking and stood very still, listening. The forest had gone quiet. No birds, no small animals, nothing but the soft hiss of snow falling from branches. But there was something else, a feeling I couldn't shake. It felt like the mountains themselves were watching me, waiting for something. The hair on the back of my neck stood up, and I knew I needed to make a decision. Go forward through the pass, or turn back and risk getting caught in the open when the storm hit. I didn't know it then, but this wasn't just another storm coming, and the choice I made in that moment would lead me into the darkest experience of my life, a nightmare where the cold was the least of my worries, and hunger took on a meaning I never could have imagined. I decided to radio for backup before going any further. After several tries, I finally got through to headquarters. The connection was bad, but I managed to report the strange weather and my concerns. "We've got 3 hikers who haven't checked in," said my boss, Jack, his voice breaking through the static. "They were supposed to return yesterday. Given this sudden storm, we're sending a search team your way. Hold your position if you can." I felt my stomach tighten. Missing hikers in these conditions was serious. I found a sheltered spot under some thick pines and waited, watching the sky grow darker by the minute. An hour later, I heard the crunch of snowshoes approaching. Richard Owens appeared first, a tall man with a red beard whose mountaineering skills had saved many lives over the years. Behind him was Thomas Running Bear, a local Blackfeet guide whose family had lived in this region for generations. 2 more rangers, Lisa and Mike, made up the rest of the team. "Evelyn," Richard nodded at me. "We'd worked together for 5 years, but were never exactly friends. He respected my skills, though, and that was enough." "Thanks for coming," I said, standing up. "This storm doesn't feel right." Thomas was looking at the sky with worried eyes. "My grandfather would call this hungry weather," he said quietly. "When the mountains wake up hungry." "Let's stick to facts," Richard said, unfolding a map. 3 college students, all experienced hikers, last seen heading toward Eagle Pass. We need to find them before this storm gets worse. I touched the search and rescue medallion I always wore around my neck. It had belonged to my father, who died in an avalanche when I was 12. He'd been a ranger too, and wearing his medallion made me feel like he was still guiding me somehow. I know that area well, I said. If they got caught in bad weather, there's an old mining cabin about 2 miles from here. They might have taken shelter there. As we set off, Lisa fell in step beside me. You okay, Evelyn? You seem on edge. I hadn't realized it was so obvious. Just a feeling, I said. Last winter keeps coming back to me. She nodded, understanding what I meant. Last winter, I'd led a search for a lost 10-year-old boy who'd wandered away from his family's campsite. I found him, but I was 10 minutes too late. 10 minutes that haunted me every day since. This is different, Lisa said gently. Those hikers are adults who know what they're doing. But something inside me knew this wasn't just about missing hikers. The forest felt wrong. The silence was too complete. The cold too biting. The wind picked up as we moved deeper into the valley, whipping snow into our faces. I squinted against it, those fine lines around my eyes deepening, lines earned from years in the sun and snow. At 35, I was the oldest woman in our ranger district and the first female search and rescue leader they'd ever had. I'd earned my position through sheer determination and skill, not because they wanted me there. Storm's getting worse, Mike called out. Temperatures dropping fast. He was right. The thermometer now read 0 degrees, a dangerous drop in just a few hours. We needed to find those hikers fast, or they wouldn't survive the night. Evelyn, what do you think? Richard asked, his breath forming thick clouds. He might not like me much, but he knew to trust my judgment in these mountains. The mining cabin is our best bet, I said. If they're not there, we'll have to make some hard choices. Thomas had been quiet, but now he moved closer to me. There's something else out here, he said in a low voice. Something my people have stories about. When hikers go missing and the weather turns against all predictions. Richard overheard. We don't have time for ghost stories, Running Bear. These people need real help. Thomas fell silent, but the look he gave me said he wasn't just being superstitious. His people had lived in these mountains for thousands of years. They knew things the rest of us didn't. As we pushed forward, the wind howled between the trees, sounding almost like a voice calling out names. My names, the others, the names of the missing hikers. Did you hear that? I asked, stopping suddenly. Just the wind, Richard said. But he didn't sound convinced. The snow was falling so heavily. Now I could barely see 10 feet ahead. This was worse than any regular blizzard I'd experienced in my 12 years as a ranger. And something else was bothering me. The disappearances we were investigating felt different from typical lost hikers. Usually people got lost because they made mistakes. They went off trail, didn't check the weather, or weren't prepared. But these hikers were experienced. They had the right gear. They knew these mountains. We're missing something, I said, more to myself than the others. What we're missing is time, Richard replied. Let's keep moving. As we trudged through deepening snow, I couldn't shake the feeling we were being watched. Not just by the mountains, but by something in them. Something that was watching us struggle, maybe even enjoying it. I told myself I was being paranoid. That the memory of finding that boy too late last winter was making me imagine things. But deep down, I knew better. Something was wrong in these mountains, and we were walking straight toward it. We'd been walking for about an hour when Mike suddenly called out, "Tracks! Over here!" We all hurried over, our snowshoes crunching through the fresh powder. I knelt, down beside what Mike had found, and felt my breath catch in my throat. The tracks in the snow were unlike anything I'd ever seen before, and I'd tracked every animal in these mountains. They were huge, much bigger than a bear's, and showed 2 feet, like a person walking. But no human could make prints this large, and no human had long, sharp claws that left deep marks in the snow like these did. What made these? Lisa asked, her voice shaking a little. Thomas was staring at the tracks with wide eyes. "My grandmother used to tell stories," he said quietly, "about a creature that walks in winter storms, something that was once human but isn't anymore." Richard sighed loudly. "It's probably just a bear walking funny on its hind legs, or the wind distorted some normal tracks." I wasn't so sure. I'd seen bear tracks thousands of times. These were different. They were spaced like a human's stride, but twice as long, and they were fresh, made within the last hour. "They're heading the same direction we are," I said, standing up, "toward the mining cabin." The sky was nearly black now, though it was only late afternoon. The wind was screaming through the trees, driving sharp needles of ice against our faces. I pulled my scarf up higher and nodded for us to continue. As we moved forward, I noticed something strange. The forest had gone completely silent. No birds, no small animals, not even the usual creaking of trees in the wind. It was as if all living things had fled from whatever was ahead of us. "Listen," I said, stopping the group. "Do you hear that?" Everyone went still. "I don't hear anything," Mike said after a moment. "That's the point," I replied. "There's nothing, no sound at all except the wind." Thomas nodded. "Animals know when to hide." We pressed on, following the strange tracks. They led us deeper into a narrow valley I knew well. Usually it was beautiful, with a small stream running through it in summer. Now it felt like we were walking into a trap. The radio on my belt suddenly crackled to life, making us all jump. Through the static, I could hear what sounded like a person's voice. "Hello? Can anyone hear me? Please help. We're at the old mine, and something is—" The voice cut off into a scream that didn't sound human anymore, then dissolved into static. "That has to be one of the missing hikers," Richard said, his face pale beneath his beard. "We need to hurry." We started moving faster, our snowshoes kicking up clouds of powder. The mining cabin wasn't far now, maybe half a mile ahead. That's when we started to smell it, a horrible odor that made my stomach turn. It was like something dead and rotting, but mixed with a sharp chemical smell I couldn't place. The smell got stronger as we moved forward. "What is that?" Lisa covered her nose with her glove. No one answered. We all knew that smell meant trouble. Soon we could see the old mining camp through the trees. It was little more than a wooden cabin with a collapsed mining entrance nearby. As we got closer, I noticed strange markings carved into the support beams of the cabin. Some looked like symbols I'd seen on Blackfeet artifacts in the Park Museum, but others I didn't recognize at all. Thomas stopped suddenly, grabbing my arm. "Those are warning signs," he whispered. "My people carved them to mark dangerous places, places where the hunger lives." "What hunger?" I asked, but before he could answer, my flashlight began to flicker, though I'd put fresh batteries in that morning. Around me, I saw the others checking their lights too. All were dimming or blinking on and off. "My compass is going crazy," Mike said, holding it up. The needle was spinning wildly, not pointing north at all. "Something's not right here," I said, stating what we all felt. We approached the cabin slowly. The door was hanging open, swinging back and forth in the wind. Inside, it was dark, but I could make out signs that someone had been there recently. A backpack lay on the floor, spilled open. A camping stove had been set up but knocked over. Richard picked up the backpack. "This belongs to one of our missing hikers," he said, reading the name tag. "Jake Simmons." Inside the pack, we found a small notebook. It was a journal. Richard flipped through it while I held my flashlight steady. "Listen to this," he said. "Day 2, the storm came out of nowhere. We made it to this old cabin just in time. Mel says she saw something following us through the trees, but Chris and I didn't see anything." He turned a page. "Day 3, we're running low on food. The storm hasn't let up. Chris tried to go for help this morning, but came back an hour later, completely confused. Said he kept ending up back at the cabin no matter which way he walked. I'm starting to feel strange, so hungry all the time, even though we still have some emergency rations left." The last entry was scribbled, the handwriting messy and hard to read. "Day 4, something is outside. It keeps calling our names in our own voices. Mel went to look and never came back. Chris is sick, keeps saying he's starving. I'm so hungry too, so hungry, but not for food, for... The entry ended there. We need to find these people now, I said, trying to keep my voice steady, but part of me already knew we were too late. We spread out to search the cabin. It was small, just one room with a wood stove in the corner. There were signs of a struggle, broken chairs, a table flipped over. "Guys," Mike's voice came from outside, "you need to see this." We hurried out to where Mike was standing in the snow, his flashlight pointing at something on the ground. It was a body. The snow around it was stained dark red, almost black in the dim light. As I moved closer, I could see it was a young man, probably in his 20s. He must have been one of our missing hikers, but what had happened to him made no sense. His body was twisted in a way that wasn't natural, like he had been trying to bend himself in half. And there were bite marks on his arms, human bite marks. His own teeth had made them. Beside him lay an unopened pack of emergency rations. "He had food," Lisa whispered. "Why would he eat himself?" Thomas finished for her. His face was grim. "The Wendigo's hunger. It gets in your head, makes you hungry in a way food can't satisfy." "This is insane," Richard said, but his voice shook. "People don't just start eating themselves when they have food right next to them." I knelt down to check for ID, trying to keep my hands from trembling. This poor kid had died in terrible pain, all alone in the snow. But something else bothered me. The body was still relatively fresh. He couldn't have been dead more than a day, which meant whatever killed him might still be nearby. That's when the blizzard suddenly intensified. The wind howled so loudly it sounded like screaming, and the temperature dropped so fast I could feel the moisture in my eyes starting to freeze. "We need shelter!" I shouted over the wind. "Back to the cabin!" As we turned to run back, I caught movement out of the corner of my eye, something tall moving through the trees at the edge of our flashlight beams. Something that didn't move like any animal I knew. I didn't point it out to the others. We were scared enough already. But as we rushed back toward the cabin, I knew one thing for certain. We weren't alone out here anymore, and whatever was with us was hungry. We huddled inside the cabin, trying to block the broken door with a fallen shelf. The wind howled outside, finding every crack in the old wooden walls. Our breath made white clouds in the freezing air. "We need to get a fire going," Richard said, moving to the small wood stove. Thankfully, there was a stack of firewood beside it, left by the hikers or maybe park rangers who had used this place before. As Richard worked on the fire, I tried the radio again. Nothing but static. We were on our own. "Thomas," I said quietly, "tell us about the Wendigo." Thomas looked up, his dark eyes reflecting the beam of my flashlight. "My people have known about it for hundreds of years. When winter is at its worst, when food is scarce, that's when it hunts." "What exactly is it?" Lisa asked, her voice shaking slightly. "It was human once," Thomas said. "The stories say it was a hunter who got lost in a winter storm, like this one. He was starving, and he ate his friends to stay alive. But that kind of hunger, it changed him, turned him into something else, something that's always starving no matter how much it eats." Mike laughed nervously. "That's just a story to scare kids into not wandering off, right?" Thomas didn't smile. "Stories exist for a reason." The temperature in the cabin was dropping. Fast, despite the small fire Richard had managed to get going. I checked my thermometer. 30 degrees. That wasn't possible. Not this time of year, not even in Montana. "Something's wrong with this," I said, showing them the thermometer. "It's dropping. Too fast." "Equipment malfunction," Richard suggested, but he didn't sound convinced. A sudden noise from outside made us all freeze. It sounded like someone calling, "Help! Please! Is anyone there?" It was a woman's voice, frightened and desperate. "That must be Melissa, one of the missing hikers," Mike said, jumping up. I grabbed his arm. "Wait, something's not right." "But she's out there freezing," Mike argued. The voice called again, but this time it sounded different, like it was trying too hard to sound human. Hello? Richard? Mike? Lisa? Evelyn? Thomas? Please help me. We all stared at each other. How? Did it know all our names? Stay here, I said, grabbing my rifle from my pack. I'll check. I'm coming with you, Thomas said firmly. Together, we approached the door. The wind had died down suddenly, which felt more ominous than the howling had been. The night outside was pitch black except for the strange glow of moonlight reflecting off the snow. We stepped outside, our boots crunching on the frozen ground. The air was so cold it burned to breathe. Hello? I called out, my rifle ready. Is someone there? A movement caught my eye to the right. Something tall was standing at the edge of the trees, partially hidden in shadows. Much taller than any person should be. Thomas, I whispered, do you see that? He nodded slowly, his body tense. The figure stepped forward into the moonlight, and I had to fight the urge to run. It was shaped like a person, but wrong in every way. It stood at least 8 feet tall, with arms and legs too long and thin for its body. Its skin was stretched tight over bones, like it was starving to death. But the worst part was its head. A human face, gaunt and hungry, with antlers growing. Out of its skull like a deer's. What in God's name? I breathed, raising my rifle. The creature tilted its head, studying us with glowing eyes that seemed to burn with a strange light. Then it opened its mouth, much wider than any human mouth. Should open and spoke. Evelyn, it said in my own voice, don't you recognize me? I'm your father. A cold that had nothing to do with the temperature went through me. It was using my dad's voice now, perfectly mimicking him as I remembered him. Don't listen, Thomas warned. It's trying to get in your head. I aimed my rifle and fired. The shot echoed through the valley. I know I hit it. I saw the bullet strike its chest, but the creature didn't even flinch. The wound closed up almost instantly, like it had never been there. The Wendigo moved suddenly, faster than anything should be able to move through deep snow. One moment it was at the tree line, the next it was just 20 feet away from us. Get back inside, I shouted to Thomas. We turned and ran for the cabin. As we burst through the door, slamming it behind us, the others looked up in alarm. What is it? What did you see? Richard demanded. We need to leave now, I said, grabbing my pack. There's another way out through the old mine shaft. It connects to a trail on the other side of the ridge. But the storm, Lisa started to say, is not as dangerous as what's out there, I finished for her. Mike looked pale. What exactly is out there? I exchanged a look with Thomas. Something that knows our names. Something bullets can't hurt. A horrible sound came from the roof then. The scraping of claws on wood like something large was climbing across it. Hello? Can you hear me? I'm so cold out here. The voice was Richard's now, a perfect copy, even though Richard was standing right beside me. Don't listen to it, Thomas warned again. That's how it tricks you. A new feeling was coming over me, a gnawing emptiness in my stomach. I was suddenly so hungry it hurt. Looking around, I could see the same pain on everyone's faces. I'm starving, Mike said, his hand on his belly. Did anyone bring food? We all had emergency rations, of course. I took mine out, high-calorie protein bars designed for survival situations. But as I unwrapped one and took a bite, it tasted like nothing, like eating paper. It didn't help the hunger at all. Thomas looked grim. This is its power. The hunger gets in your head, makes you think normal food won't satisfy you, makes you think you need something else. Richard was staring at Lisa with a strange look in his eyes. I didn't like it. We need to move, I said, firmly. Now, grab only what you need and follow me. I led the way to the back of the cabin, where a door opened to a short tunnel connecting to the old mine. It wasn't safe. These tunnels were 100 years old and hadn't been maintained, but it was our only chance. The tunnel was tight and dark, forcing us to move in single file. I went first, then Lisa, Mike, Richard, with Thomas taking up the rear. Our flashlights made strange shadows on the rocky walls. The air was stale and cold. Behind us, I heard the cabin door crash open. The Wendigo had gotten in. We moved faster, trying not to make noise. The hunger in my stomach was getting worse with every step. I could hear Mike breathing heavily behind, me muttering about being starving. I was worried about him, about all of us. If the stories Thomas told were true, this hunger could make us turn on each other. We had gone maybe 200 feet into the tunnel when a terrible scream echoed from behind us. It was Thomas. I turned and pushed past the others, shining my light back down the tunnel. Thomas was gone. In his place was a smear of blood on the floor and walls. "Keep moving," I ordered, my voice steadier than I felt. Now! We ran through. The tunnel, the beams of our flashlights bouncing wildly on the walls. The mine shaft ahead was dark and seemed to go on forever. "I think I see light," Lisa called out. "There's an opening ahead." She was right. A faint glow of moonlight showed where the tunnel exited on the other side of the ridge. We were almost there. That's when Mike stopped suddenly, doubling over. "I can't. I'm so hungry," he groaned. His eyes looked different, wild, animal-like. "Mike, stay with us," I said, reaching for him. "We're almost out." He looked up at me, and in the beam of my flashlight I saw his eyes glowing with the same strange light as the Wendigo's. "So hungry," he whispered. Then he lunged at Richard. I grabbed Mike's jacket and pulled him back, but he was stronger than he should have been. His teeth snapped as he tried to bite Richard's arm. "He's turning!" Thomas had warned us the Wendigo's influence could spread. Now I was seeing it happen. Richard shoved Mike hard, sending him sprawling back against the tunnel wall. "What do we do?" he asked me, his voice shaking. I didn't have an answer. I couldn't shoot Mike. He was one of us, someone I was responsible for. But I also couldn't let him attack us. The decision was taken from me when a long, skeletal hand reached out of the darkness behind Mike and wrapped around his throat. Mike screamed as he was dragged backward into the shadows. "Run!" I shouted. "Don't look back!" We sprinted the last 50 feet to the tunnel exit, bursting out into the moonlit night. The cold hit us like a wall, but it was better than the horror behind us. Looking around, I realized we were on the other side of the ridge, about a mile from the fire lookout tower. If we could reach it, we might have a chance. Those towers were built solid, with radio equipment that might work even in this storm. "This way," I said, pointing toward where I knew the tower stood. "It's our only hope." As we started moving, I heard that terrible voice again, coming from everywhere and nowhere. "Evelyn, I'm still hungry." It wasn't using anyone else's voice anymore. It was using Mike's. We pushed through the snow toward the fire lookout tower. The cold was beyond anything I'd ever felt, burning our lungs with each breath. My thermometer read 60 degrees Celsius, which shouldn't have been possible. "This wasn't natural weather. I can't feel my feet," Lisa said, her voice weak. Her face was pale, frost forming on her eyelashes. "Keep moving," Richard urged. "Movement keeps your blood flowing." I could see the tower now, a dark shape against the night sky about half a mile ahead. It stood on a rocky outcrop, tall and lonely, against the storm. If we could just reach it, we might survive until morning. "Do you think Thomas is really gone?" Lisa asked quietly. I didn't answer right away. I'd seen the blood in the tunnel, but part of me hoped he'd somehow escaped. "We need to focus on staying alive," I finally said. The snow was getting deeper, making each step a struggle. We were moving slower now, our strength draining. And all the while, that terrible hunger grew inside me. My stomach felt like it was eating itself. I knew the others felt it too. "I need food," Richard said suddenly, stopping in his tracks. "I can't go any further without eating something." "Your rations won't help," I warned him, remembering how mine had tasted like nothing. "The Wendigo is doing this to us." Richard's eyes had a strange gleam to them. "I know what would help," he said, looking at Lisa in a way that made my skin crawl. I stepped between them. Richard, fight it. This isn't you, he blinked, seeming to come back to himself a little. I don't know what's happening to me, he said, his voice shaking. I feel like I'm losing my mind. It's the creature, I explained. Thomas said it puts this hunger in your head, makes you think you need to eat things you shouldn't. Lisa looked terrified. Can we outrun it? I don't think so, I admitted. But we need to try. We kept moving toward the tower, but it felt like we were walking through a nightmare. The moonlight made strange shadows on the snow, shadows that seemed to move when we weren't looking directly at them. And all around us, voices called out. Mike's, Thomas's, even the missing hikers we'd never met. What's that? Lisa suddenly pointed ahead. Something was moving toward us through the snow. My heart sank when I recognized Thomas's jacket. But it wasn't Thomas wearing it anymore. The Wendigo had put it on like a trophy. The creature moved toward us with those impossibly long limbs, its antlered head tilted curiously. This close, I could see that its skin wasn't just tight over bones. It was almost transparent, like ice. Run! I shouted, firing my rifle at it. Again, the bullets seemed to pass right through, the wounds closing instantly. We ran for the tower, our legs heavy in the deep snow. I could hear the creature behind us, moving faster than we could, playing with us like a cat with mice. It's toying with us, Richard gasped. It could catch us if it wanted to. He was right. The Wendigo was enjoying our fear, our desperation. It was making our last moments as terrifying as possible. The tower was just ahead now. I could see the metal stairs that led up to the observation room at the top. If we could get inside and barricade the door, Lisa screamed. I turned to see the Wendigo had caught up to her, its long fingers wrapped around her arm. The touch of its hand was causing her skin to freeze instantly, turning black with frostbite. Richard rushed back, swinging his ice axe at the creature. Let her go! The Wendigo turned its attention to Richard, releasing Lisa, who fell into the snow. It opened its mouth and released a cloud of freezing mist. When it touched Richard's face, his skin frosted over immediately. Get to the tower, I yelled to Lisa, who was struggling to her feet. I fired my last bullets at the Wendigo, trying to distract it from Richard. The creature turned to me, those glowing eyes fixing on mine. It still had Richard by the throat, lifting him off the ground with one hand. Evelyn, Richard gasped. Run! Those were his last words. The Wendigo's jaw unhinged like a snake's, opening impossibly wide. I turned away, but I couldn't block out the terrible sounds. I ran for the tower, catching up to Lisa, who was already climbing the metal stairs. They were icy, and our hands stuck to the freezing metal, but fear gave us strength. We made it to the top and slammed the door behind us, throwing the bolt just as something heavy hit it from the other side. The observation room was small but solid, with windows on all sides to allow rangers to spot fires in summer. Now those windows let in only moonlight and the sight of the howling blizzard outside. What do we do now? Lisa asked, her injured arm held against her chest. The frostbite looked bad. I looked around desperately. There was a radio set up, but it was old and probably wouldn't work in this storm. Still, I had to try. Ranger Station, this is Evelyn Hawkins. Do you copy? I repeated the call several times, adjusting dials, but heard only static in response. The pounding on the door grew louder. Metal bent inward with each blow. It's going to get in, Lisa whispered. We can't stop it. She was right. Nothing we had tried had even slowed the Wendigo down. Bullets passed through it. Cold didn't affect it. What could possibly hurt something? Like that? Then I remembered what Thomas had said earlier before he was taken. Something about his people's stories. Fire, I said suddenly. Thomas said fire is the only thing that can hurt it. I looked around the small room. There was an emergency kit in the corner. Inside, I found what I was hoping for. Emergency flares. We need to make a trap, I told Lisa. When it breaks through, we need to surround it with fire. We worked quickly, our numb fingers struggling with the flares. I also found a can of lamp oil in a cupboard. Rangers used it to light the old-style lamps when the electricity failed. "I'll draw it to me," I said, "and you light the flares. We need to get it fully inside the room." Lisa nodded, her face determined despite her fear. "I understand." The door was beginning to splinter. Long fingers poked through the cracks, feeling for the lock. "Get ready," I whispered, positioning myself on the far side of the room. Lisa hid beside the door with the flares ready. With a final massive blow, the door burst open. The Wendigo stood in the doorway, its antlered head nearly touching the ceiling. It was covered in blood, Richard's, Thomas's, Mike's. "Come on," I called to it. "You're still hungry, aren't you? I'm right here." The creature stepped fully into the room, its attention fixed on me. That was what we needed. "Now," I shouted. Lisa jumped out and struck the flares, throwing them in a circle around the Wendigo. At the same time, I splashed the lamp oil in an arc, creating a wall of fire as it caught. The effect was instant and terrible. The Wendigo shrieked, a sound like ice cracking and animals dying all at once. Its body began to smoke where the flames touched it. For the first time, it seemed afraid. I grabbed more flares, striking them and throwing them directly at the creature. Where they touched, its icy skin blackened and melted. But even in its pain, the Wendigo was dangerous. It lashed out with one long arm, catching me across the chest with its claws. I felt my ribs crack and warm blood flow down my front. I stumbled back, fighting to stay conscious. "Keep it burning," I called to Lisa. The fire was spreading now, catching on the wooden walls of the tower. We were running out of time in more ways than one. The Wendigo thrashed in the flames, its body twisting unnaturally as it burned. But even dying, it was cunning. It lunged forward suddenly, one of its antlers catching me in the chest like a spear. The pain was blinding. I looked down to see the antler had gone straight through me. The Wendigo's face was inches from mine, those glowing eyes staring into my soul. "Evelyn!" Lisa screamed from somewhere far away. With my last strength, I grabbed the final flare from my pocket and struck it against the Wendigo's face. The creature's head burst into flames. It screamed so loud, the windows of the tower shattered. It released me, staggering backward through the broken door and out onto the observation platform. I fell to my knees, watching as the burning creature toppled over the railing, falling down the side of the mountain in a trail of fire. "Evelyn, we have to get out." Lisa was pulling at my arm. "The whole tower is burning." I looked down at the wound in my chest. We both knew I wasn't going anywhere. "Go," I told her. "Follow the ridge east. There's a ranger station about 5 miles from here. You can make it." "I can't leave you," she said, tears freezing on her cheeks. "You have to," I replied. "Someone needs to tell what happened here, about the Wendigo, so others will know." I could feel the cold creeping into me now, but strangely the hunger was gone. It had died with the creature. "Go," I said again, more firmly. Lisa hesitated, then nodded. "I'll come back with help." We both knew she wouldn't find me alive, but it was a kind lie. She squeezed my hand one last time, then disappeared down the stairs as the fire spread. I dragged myself to the radio. It probably wouldn't work, but I had to try. I had to record what happened here. "This is Ranger Evelyn Hawkins," I spoke into the microphone, my voice weak. "Final report on the search for missing hikers in Glacier National Park." I explained everything: the Wendigo, what had happened to our team, how fire was the only way to kill it. I didn't know if anyone would ever hear this recording, but I had to try. As I spoke, I looked out the window at the burning shape that had fallen down the mountainside. Through the falling snow, I thought I saw movement. More than one shape, moving through the trees below. My father's search and rescue medallion felt heavy around my neck. I touched it one last time, hoping I'd made him proud. I'd done my job to the end. I'd saved Lisa. I'd killed the creature. But as darkness closed in around me, I couldn't shake one final, terrible thought. What if the Wendigo wasn't alone? What if it was just one of many? As consciousness slipped away, I heard the wind outside. Or maybe it was something else. It sounded like hungry breathing, like something waiting patiently for the fire to die out. Waiting to reclaim its territory when spring came, waiting to hunt again. When the spring thaw came months later, search teams finally reached the burned-out shell of the fire lookout tower. They found my body still sitting at the radio, my final report clutched in frozen hands. They also found strange tracks in the mud around the tower, impossibly large, bipedal tracks with claw marks. Tracks that circled the tower again and again, as if something had been waiting for winter to return, waiting to feed again. Because in the mountains, when the snow falls deep and the wind howls like a voice, the hunger never truly dies, it only sleeps. My name is Robert Jackson. Most people just call me Ranger Jackson. And I've been watching over the boundary waters of Minnesota for almost 30 years now. 3 more months and I'll be hanging up my ranger hat for good. Retirement. Funny how that word used to sound like a prison sentence to me. Now I'm not so sure what I'll do with myself when I'm not out here anymore. The morning air is crisp against my face as I paddle across the still water. It's early October, and the trees are showing off their best colors. Bright reds, deep oranges, and golden yellows reflecting in the lake like a painting that can't make up its mind. I've seen this view thousands of times, but it never gets old. I pull my canoe up to the shore and tie it securely to a sturdy birch tree. The wind whispers through the pines, bringing the sweet, earthy smell of fallen leaves and wet soil. Somewhere, far away, I can hear geese honking as they head south. Smart birds. They know winter's coming. This portage trail is an old friend of mine. I've walked it so many times I could probably do it blindfolded. Each step feels right, like I belong here in a way I never felt in town. Since Mary died 5 years ago, these woods have become more than just my job. They're my home, my comfort, my purpose. I reach up to touch the wedding band I still wear. Mary loved these forests almost as much as I do. We used to come camping here when we could manage a weekend away. After the cancer took her, I started volunteering for extra patrols, especially in the remote areas. My colleagues worry about me spending so much time alone out here, but the wilderness understands grief in a way people don't. My hands are rough with calluses from decades of paddling canoes and climbing over rocks. At 58, my face is weathered like old leather, but my eyes are still sharp. Have to be in this job. Missing small details out here can be the difference between finding someone who's lost and adding another name to the missing persons list. That's why the marks on the tree ahead stop me in my tracks. I kneel down to get a better look. Claw marks, but not like any bear I've ever seen. Too precise, too intentional. Bears mark territory by clawing trees, sure, but these scratches form a pattern that feels too methodical. My 30 years of experience tells me something's not right here. I stand up and notice how the afternoon sun is starting to stretch the shadows long across the forest floor. The patterns of light and dark shift in a way that makes my eyes play tricks on me. For a second, I could swear I saw something move between the trees, but when I focus, there's nothing there. This trip isn't just another routine patrol. I'm meeting up with Dr. Catherine Murray, a wildlife biologist, and Peter Morningstar, a local guide with Ojibwe roots. We're investigating reports of missing hikers, 3 in the past 2 months. That's unusual for this area, especially with experienced backpackers. I've found a lot of lost people over the years. They usually make the same mistakes, wandering off trail, not paying attention to landmarks, panicking when they realize they're turned around. But these recent disappearances feel different. These were experienced outdoors people who knew what they were doing. Something about this case has been eating at me. The signs I've been finding over the past few weeks don't match anything I've seen before, and I've tracked every predator in these parts. My instincts, the ones that have kept me alive all these years, are telling me we're dealing with something new, or maybe something very, very old. I check my watch. Dr. Murray and Morningstar should be waiting at the rendezvous point about a mile ahead. I adjust my pack and keep moving, but I can't shake the feeling that something's watching me from just beyond the trees. The forest feels different today, tense, like it's holding its breath. And in 30 years as a ranger, I've learned one important thing. When the forest changes its behavior, you'd better pay attention. I reach the meeting spot just as the sun starts to dip behind the tall pines. Dr. Catherine Murray is already there, setting up her equipment on a flat rock. She's younger than me, maybe mid-30s, with practical clothes and a serious face that brightens when she sees me. "Ranger Jackson, right on time," she says, extending her hand. Peter Morningstar stands nearby, checking supplies in his backpack. He's about my height, but leaner, with dark hair pulled back and eyes that miss nothing. His grandfather was an Ojibwe elder, and Peter grew up learning the old ways alongside modern tracking techniques. "The forest is uneasy today," Peter says quietly after we shake hands. He doesn't explain further, but I know exactly what he means. I felt it too. We review our plan as the daylight fades. We'll head north tomorrow, following the most likely path taken by the last missing hiker, a woman named Sarah Chen, who disappeared 10 days ago. "I've been marking unusual signs on this map," I tell them, unfolding my worn trail map on a flat rock. "These red X's show where I've found those strange scratch marks, and these circles are where compasses have been acting funny." Dr. Murray raises an eyebrow. "Compass problems could be natural magnetic deposits." "Maybe," I say, but I don't believe it. "But they're recent. These trails were fine last month." We set up camp as darkness settles in. The fire crackles and sends sparks up toward the stars. Out here, with no city lights, the night sky is alive with more stars than you can imagine. "Rangers found Sarah's backpack here." I point to a spot on the map, but no other signs of her. That's not normal. When hikers get lost, they leave traces, broken branches, footprints, something. "What about the other two who went missing?" Dr. Murray asks. "Mark Jeffries, age 42, disappeared 6 weeks ago, and before him Tom Wilson, age 36. Both experienced outdoorsmen." I take a sip from my coffee cup. "Both disappeared without a trace." Peter pokes at the fire with a stick. "My people have stories about these woods," he says softly. "About times when people vanish. About places where the forest changes." A chill runs down my spine that has nothing to do with the night air. We turn in early, planning to get a fresh start at dawn. Inside my tent, I try the radio for my nightly check-in with headquarters. "Ranger Station, this is Jackson. Over." I get nothing but static in return. I try again, adjusting the frequency slightly. More static, then a burst of broken words I can't make out, then silence. That's odd. We're well within range. I step outside my tent and try again. Still nothing but crackling static. The hair on. The back of my neck stands up. In nearly 30 years, I've never had radio problems in this area. Sleep doesn't come easy. I lie awake, listening. The forest is too quiet. No owls calling, no rustling of small animals in the underbrush. Just silence. I must have dozed off eventually because suddenly I'm wide awake, my heart pounding. Something woke me. I look at my watch, 3:17 a.m., then I hear it. Wolves howling from a nearby ridge. Their mournful calls echo across the water. I've heard wolf packs hundreds of times, but something about this howling sounds different, almost like a warning. Halfway through their chorus, the wolves suddenly stop. Not fading away or moving on, but cutting off mid-howl, as if someone flipped a switch. The silence that follows is worse than any sound. My hand reaches for my rifle, a movement so automatic I barely realize I'm doing it. 30 years of instinct, telling me something is very wrong. Dawn breaks with a heavy fog clinging to the ground, weaving between the trees like ghostly fingers. It shouldn't be this foggy. The temperature didn't drop enough overnight for this kind of ground mist. Did you hear the wolves last night? I ask as we eat a quick breakfast. Dr. Murray nods. Never heard them stop like that before. Very unusual behavior. Something scared them, Peter says, his eyes scanning the tree line. Something they fear more than humans. We pack up camp and head north, following Sarah Chen's last known route. The fog makes it harder to see landmarks, and I find myself double-checking the map more often than usual. Look at this, Dr. Murray calls out, kneeling beside a large pine tree. We join her, examining what looks like claw marks about 7 feet up the trunk. Bear, she asks, but her voice says she already knows the answer. I shake my head. No bear made these. I place my hand next to the marks. 5 distinct grooves, almost like fingers, too high for a bear on all fours, and bears don't stand to mark territory. And look how deep they go, Peter adds. Whatever made these was strong. As we continue, I try the radio again. This time I get a burst of static followed by what sounds like my own voice, words I spoke yesterday during an earlier check-in attempt, then more garbled static before the radio goes completely silent. That's not possible, Dr. Murray says, her scientific mind clearly troubled. The radio just played back your voice from yesterday? I nod, feeling a chill despite the day warming up. Like an echo from the past. We reach a narrow path that winds between 2 massive granite outcroppings. It creates a natural bottleneck, the kind of place that makes any tracker nervous. Perfect spot for an ambush. I don't like this, Peter says, voicing what I'm thinking. As we carefully make our way through, I can't shake the feeling that we're being watched. Not by anything human, but by something that knows these woods better than even I do. Something waiting and watching and learning. We make it through the narrow path and stop to drink some water. The day's getting warmer, but the strange fog still hangs around our feet. It shouldn't be here with the sun this high. I want to show you both something, I say, leading them off the main trail. About 50 yards into the trees, I stop at a small clearing I found last week. Dr. Murray gasps. Peter just stares, his face going still. In the middle of the clearing stands what looks like some kind of structure. Branches and stones arranged in a way that couldn't possibly be natural. The branches are woven together in complex patterns, forming a dome-like shape about 5 feet tall. Around it, stones are placed in perfect circles. I found this 4 days ago, I explain. No hikers come to this area. It's too far off trail. Dr. Murray approaches it slowly. This shows tool use and planning. The branches are stripped of bark and woven with precision. Not human, Peter says firmly. No human made this. What do you mean? Dr. Murray asks. Peter points to the ground around the structure. No footprints. No camping gear, no trash left behind. Humans always leave some trace. He's right. In all my years, I've never seen people who could move through the forest without leaving signs. There's more, I tell them. Follow me. About a quarter mile away, I show them what I found 2 days ago. Tracks pressed deep into the soft earth. Near a creek, they look almost human, but all wrong. Too large, with 5 toes and what appears to be an opposable thumb. These are fresh, Dr. Murray says, kneeling to examine them. She places her own hand next to one print for scale. The print is twice the size of her hand. The depth is interesting, she continues. Whatever made these is heavy, much heavier than its size would suggest. As we stand there, I catch a whiff of something musky and strange, not like any animal I know. Peter smells it too. I can tell by the way his nostrils flare. It's been here recently, he says quietly. We continue our investigation, heading toward the spot where Sarah Chen's backpack was found. The forest feels different here. Empty. No birds singing, no squirrels chattering, no insects buzzing. Just silence. Listen, I whisper. What don't you hear? They both pause, then Dr. Murray's eyes widen. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. The forest is never this quiet, Peter adds. Never. Dr. Murray pulls out her GPS unit to mark our location. She frowns, tapping the screen. That's odd. No signal. She looks up. Clear sky, no reason to lose satellites. I try my compass. The needle spins wildly, not pointing north or any consistent direction. This happened to me yesterday too, I say. Equipment failing for no reason. Peter takes out his own compass. Same problem. The needle just spins and spins. We should mark our path the old way, he suggests, pulling out a small knife to make subtle marks on trees as we go. We reach the spot where the search team found Sarah's backpack. It's a small clearing next to a stream. Nothing seems unusual about it, which is exactly what bothers me. Most lost hikers leave signs of distress or struggle. There's nothing here. As Dr. Murray examines the area, I notice something on a tree, at the edge of the clearing. Walking closer, I see claw marks again, but different this time, deliberate, almost like writing. Peter joins me, his face serious as he traces the marks with his fingers. My grandfather told stories, he says softly, about symbols like these, warnings from the old times about places where the forest walks. What does that mean? Dr. Murray asks, joining us. Peter shakes his head. Stories said there were territories, where the trees themselves would move, where paths would change, where the forest protected something that lived within it. A chill runs through me, despite the afternoon warmth. We set up camp before sunset, choosing an open area where we can see in all directions. No one says it, but we're all thinking the same thing. We don't want anything sneaking up on us. As I'm setting up my tent, Dr. Murray calls us over. Look at this, she says, pointing to something on the ground near the fire pit we're building. It's a deadfall trap. Branches arranged to fall and trap an animal when triggered. But this is unlike any trap I've ever seen. The engineering is complex, with counterweights and trigger mechanisms that would require tools and understanding of physics. No animal made this, Dr. Murray says, her scientific certainty wavering for the first time. And no hunter I know makes traps like this, I add. I've been in these woods for decades. This is new. As night falls, we take turns keeping watch. The fire casts dancing shadows into the surrounding darkness. Every snap of a twig makes us all jump. During my watch, around midnight, I hear something moving just beyond the firelight. Something big, yet moving with impossible silence. Just the faint displacement of air, the subtle creak of a branch taking weight. I reach slowly for my rifle, careful not to make sudden movements. Then I see it, or rather, I see a shadow that's darker than the night, moving between trees about 50 yards out. It's huge, at least 8 feet tall, but somehow blending with the forest so well I can barely track it. Peter, I whisper, waking him without taking my eyes off the spot where I saw movement. He's instantly alert, sitting up without a sound. I gesture with my head toward where I saw the figure. Peter watches, his eyes narrowed, then slowly nods. He sees it too. The shadow moves again, circling our camp, testing us, watching us. It's assessing us, Peter whispers, learning. I raise my rifle, pointing it toward the movement, but as soon as I do, the shadow melts away into the darkness. Gone. Or just hiding better. None of us sleep much after that. In the morning, Dr. Murray emerges from her tent looking pale. She's holding her hand out, showing us small objects from her backpack, a compass, a pen, her small mirror, all arranged in a perfect line outside her tent flap. I packed these away last night, she says, her voice shaking slightly. Inside my pack, inside my tent. We find more tracks around our campsite, going right up to each of our tents. Whatever was watching us came close while we slept, close enough to reach out and touch us. Peter discovers that something, has handled our canoes. There are fresh claw marks on the gunnels, not deep enough to damage them, but clearly testing their strength. It's curious about our things, Doctor, Murray says, examining the marks. Testing, learning. My radio crackles to life suddenly, making us all jump. But instead of headquarters, I hear fragments of my own voice again, from calls I made days ago, playing back in random order. When Dr. Murray tries to use the satellite phone, she finds it disassembled, not broken or smashed, but carefully taken apart, each piece laid out in order, as if someone was studying how it works. This isn't destruction, she says, looking at the neat arrangement of components. This is investigation. We try to reassemble the phone, but key components are missing. That's when I realize we aren't just being watched. We're being hunted by something intelligent. We need to get out of here, I say, trying to keep my voice steady. Head back to Ranger headquarters and bring a larger team. Dr. Murray and Peter nod in agreement. None of us says what we're all thinking. Whatever is out there might not let us leave. There's an old hunting cabin about 5 miles southeast, I tell them, pointing to the map. It has a radio, supplies, and it's built solid. We can make it there by nightfall if we move fast. We pack quickly, leaving behind anything we don't absolutely need. Weight and speed matter more than comfort now. As we prepare to leave, Peter kneels down, placing a small bundle of tobacco on the ground, an offering for safe passage, he explains when he sees me watching. My grandfather taught me to respect what we don't understand. I check my rifle one last time. Last night, it was fine. This morning, I find the firing pin missing. I search my pack, my pockets, the ground around my tent. Nothing. My rifle's been disabled, I tell the others, trying to hide the shake in my voice. In 30 years, I've never felt this vulnerable in these woods. Peter checks his hunting knife, then frowns. The blade's been dulled. It was sharp yesterday. Whatever's watching us doesn't want us armed. We start hiking toward the cabin, moving as quickly as we can while still watching for signs and staying alert. I lead, with Dr. Murray in the middle and Peter taking the rear position. The forest feels wrong around us, too quiet, too still, like it's holding its breath. About an hour into our journey, I notice something odd. The path ahead doesn't match my memory or my map. A stand of birch trees should be visible ahead, but instead there's a rocky outcropping I don't recognize. This can't be right, I mutter, checking my map again. I know these woods like the back of my hand. Could we have taken a wrong turn? Dr. Murray asks. I shake my head. No, this is the main trail, but it's changed. Peter's face is grim. The forest walks, he says quietly, repeating what he told us about his grandfather's warnings. We push on, but I can't shake the feeling that we're being herded, like the path is deliberately changing to lead us somewhere. Landmarks I've known for decades are either missing or in the wrong places. By midday, we should have covered 3 miles. My best guess is we've only gone half that distance, though it's hard to be sure with no working compass or GPS. We need to rest for a few minutes, I say, finding a fallen log where we can sit. Save your water, small sips only, while Dr. Murray and I rest. Peter scouts ahead a short distance. He's back in less than 5 minutes, his face troubled. There are no animals, he says. Not even tracks. It's like they've all left the area. Animals know when danger is present. They clear out. The fact that even the squirrels and birds are gone sends a chill through me. We continue on, the forest growing denser around us. The trees seem to close in, branches reaching out like fingers. The path narrows until we're walking single file. Robert, Dr. Murray's voice comes from behind me. Do you smell that? I do. That same musky odor from before, but stronger now. Close. Keep moving, I say. Stay together. The path opens into a small clearing. Across it, I can see where the trail continues. We're about halfway to the cabin now. Let's cross quickly, I say. I don't like being in the open. We're halfway across when we hear it, my voice coming from the trees to our left. Catherine, over here! I found something. It's my voice, perfect in every way. but I didn't speak. Dr. Murray freezes, looking confused for a split second before her training kicks in. "It's not him," Peter says sharply, grabbing her arm. "It's mimicking." The voice calls again, this time sounding like Peter. "Catherine, help! I'm hurt!" "Don't separate," I warn. "That's what it wants." We hurry across the clearing, staying close, together. Just as we reach the far side, we hear a terrible crash behind us. Turning, I see a massive tree has fallen, blocking the way we came. It wasn't rotted or damaged. Something pushed it over. "Move!" I urge, pushing them ahead of me. "Fast as you can." We pick up our pace, almost jogging now. The forest seems to shift around us, becoming unfamiliar with each step. Trails that should go straight now twist and turn. "Look," Dr. Murray points to a tree ahead. More of those strange symbols are carved into the bark. Fresh marks, the wood still pale where it's been cut. Peter studies them, his expression grim. "A warning," he translates. "Not for us, for others like it. It's marked us as prey." The afternoon wears on and the sun begins to dip toward the horizon. We should have reached the cabin by now. According to my map and my knowledge of these woods, we've gone in the right direction, but there's no cabin in sight. "We need to find shelter before dark," I say. "If we haven't found the cabin by then, we'll have to make do." As the words leave my mouth, I hear Dr. Murray gasp. "What was that?" she whispers. In the growing shadows between the trees, something huge moves. Just a glimpse, a massive shape, at least 8 feet tall, covered in dark fur. There and then, gone so fast I might think I imagined it, except we all saw it. "Run," Peter says quietly. "Now." We break into a sprint, abandoning any pretense of caution. Behind us I hear movement, fast, powerful movement crashing through the underbrush. Whatever it is, it's not trying to hide anymore. There, Dr. Murray points ahead. Through the trees, I can see the outline of the old hunting cabin. Relief floods through me, but it's short-lived. The crashing sounds behind us are getting closer. We're not going to make it. Not all of us. "Keep going," I shout. "I'll slow it down." I stop and turn, facing the approaching sounds. I don't have my rifle, but I have my knife and decades of wilderness experience. I might be able to buy them time. "Robert, no!" Dr. Murray calls back. "Get to the cabin," I yell. "Go!" They hesitate, then keep running. I can see them making for the cabin door. About 100 yards away. I brace myself, knife in hand, as the crashing gets closer. Then suddenly, silence. The forest goes completely still. I scan the trees, trying to see where the threat is coming from. Nothing. The silence stretches for 1 minute, then 2. I start to think maybe it's given up when I hear Dr. Murray scream. From the direction of the cabin, I spin and run toward her voice. As I approach the cabin, I see Peter kneeling on the ground. Dr. Murray nowhere in sight. "It took her," Peter says, his voice shaking. "It just reached out from between the trees and took her. I tried to hold on, but I look around wildly. 'Catherine!' I yell, not caring now if I attract attention. 'Catherine!' her voice answers, but from 3 different directions at once. Perfect mimicry, calling for help from all around us. There's no way to tell which is real, if any. "The cabin," I say, pulling Peter to his feet. "Now!" We make it to the door and throw ourselves inside, slamming it shut behind us. I grab a heavy chair and wedge it under the doorknob while Peter checks the windows. The cabin is dusty but intact. There's a radio on a shelf and canned food in the cupboards. It looks like no one has been here in months. "The radio," I say, crossing to it quickly. I turn it on, adjust the frequency. Nothing but static. I try different channels. Same result. "It's been tampered with," Peter says, examining the back of the unit. "Look, key components have been removed, just like our satellite phone." It was here before us, I realize. It knew where we were going. Outside, darkness is falling fast. Through the window, I can see the shadows growing longer, deeper. "We need to barricade everything," I say. "Use whatever you can find." As we're pushing a heavy table against the door, we hear Dr. Murray's voice again, this time right outside the cabin. "Help me! Please! It's right behind me!" She sounds terrified, her voice breaking with fear. It takes everything I have not to. Throw open the door. "It's not her," Peter says, his hand on my arm. "It's using her voice. The real Catherine wouldn't give away her position by yelling." He's right. The real Dr. Murray would know better. We finish barricading the doors and windows, using furniture, shelves, anything we can find. Then we wait in the growing darkness, listening to the sounds outside. Something circles the cabin, testing each window, each weak point. The roof creaks as if under great weight. The walls seem to flex inward, like something is pressing against them. The voice keeps calling, using all of our voices now, crying for help, making sounds of pain and fear. It's psychological warfare, and it's working. Every instinct I have screams to help my friends, even though I know it's a trick. As full night descends, the attack begins in earnest. Something massive slams against the door, making the whole cabin shake. The barricade holds, but barely. Another hit like that and we'll be exposed. I search frantically for anything we can use as a weapon. In a drawer, I find an old flare gun with 2 flares. Better than nothing. The pounding at the door stops suddenly. Silence falls again, broken only by our ragged breathing. Then, impossibly, I feel something in my pocket, something that wasn't there before. I reach in slowly and pull out the firing pin from my rifle. It's been returned to me. The message is clear. It wants a fight. It wants me to have a chance, however small. And as the moonlight, a hunter's moon bright and full, streams through cracks in the boarded windows, I realize our night of terror is just beginning. "It gave you back the firing pin," Peter says, staring at the small metal piece in my hand. "Why would it do that?" I shake my head, already moving to retrieve my rifle from my pack. "I don't know. Maybe it wants a fair fight. Maybe it's just playing with us." My hands work quickly, reassembling the rifle with practiced movements. The weight of it, complete again, gives me a small measure of comfort. "We need to find Catherine," I say, checking that the rifle is loaded. "She could still be alive." Peter nods, his face grim in the dim light of our single lantern. "But that's what it wants. For us to go out there looking for her, I know." I check my watch, just past midnight. "But we can't leave her out there." A new sound reaches us then, a soft tapping at the window, too rhythmic to be random. Peter and I exchange glances, then slowly approach the boarded window. Through a crack between the boards, I can see something small and metallic catching the moonlight. Tap, tap, tap against the glass. "It's the missing parts from the satellite. Phone," Peter whispers. "The creature is returning our things, piece by piece." Another message. It could have killed us already if it wanted to. The tapping stops. In its place comes a sound that makes my blood run cold. Dr. Murray's voice, calm and clear right outside the window. "Robert." "Peter, I understand it now. It's not what we thought. You need to see this." It sounds exactly like her, not scared, not calling for help, but talking like a scientist who's made a discovery. "Don't listen," Peter warns, but I'm already peering through the crack in the boards. What I see steals my breath. Dr. Murray is standing in the clearing before the cabin, apparently unharmed. The moonlight illuminates her face clearly. She's looking right at me, her expression serious but calm. It's communicating, Robert. It's trying to understand us. "I've seen where it lives. There are others who went missing. They're alive. Every instinct I've developed over 30 years tells me this is wrong, a trap. But what if it isn't? What if she's really found something? Catherine," I call through the crack. "If that's really, you tell me something only you would know." She smiles, but something's off about it. "We met 3 days ago when you picked me up at the ranger station. You showed me your map with the red X marks." All true. But nothing someone watching us wouldn't know. "Tell her to come to the door," Peter suggests quietly. "Catherine, come to the door." I call. She takes a step forward, then stops, looking uncertain. I can't. It won't let me come that close yet. But it wants to show you something. Something important. I pull back from the window, meeting Peter's gaze. What do you think? I think we're being hunted, he says simply. And this is the bait. A crash from the other side of the cabin cuts our conversation short. Something heavy has hit the back wall. We rush over to find a small section of the wall splintered inward. Through the hole, I can see only darkness. I raise my rifle, aiming at the opening. We can't stay here, I say. The cabin won't hold much longer. Peter nods, grabbing his pack. We make a run for it. Try to reach Ranger headquarters. And Catherine? His eyes are sad but determined. We look for her on the way, but we don't separate no matter what we hear or see. I take a deep breath, then nod. On 3, we move the barricade and go out the front door. Ready your flashlight. We move fast and don't stop. Peter positions himself by the table, barricading the door, ready to help me move it. 1, 2, 3. We shove the table aside, and I yank the door open, rifle raised. The clearing is empty. No sign of Dr. Murray or anything else. Go! I hiss, and we run out into the moonlight, heading for the trail that should lead back to Ranger headquarters. The forest seems to close in around us as we run, branches reaching like arms, roots rising to trip our feet. The path twists in ways that make no sense, doubling back on itself, leading us in circles. This way, I gasp, veering off what looks like the main trail. I know a shortcut. We crash through underbrush, the moonlight filtering through the trees, just enough to see by. Behind us, I hear movement, heavy footfalls, branches breaking under great weight. It's following us. No longer hiding, no longer playing, hunting. Ahead, the trees thin. I can see a rocky slope leading up to higher ground. If we can reach it, we'll have a better view, better position. There, I point. Up that slope. We're halfway up when I hear Peter cry out. Turning, I see him fall, his leg caught in something. I scramble back down to him. Trap, he gasps, pointing to what looks like a snare around his ankle, the rope leading to a complex system of counterweights. It wasn't here when we passed earlier. I swear it wasn't here. I kneel to free him, working to loosen the snare. I believe you. The rope is pulled incredibly tight, and as I work to free Peter, I notice strange markings woven into the fibers, not made by human hands. Finally, the snare loosens. Peter pulls his leg free, wincing in pain. Can you walk? I ask. He tests his weight on the injured ankle, nodding grimly. No choice. We continue up the slope, Peter limping but keeping pace. At the top, we pause to catch our breath and get our bearings. The moon casts everything in silver light, making the forest below us look like a rolling sea of shadows. From this height, I can see a large, dark opening in the hillside about a quarter-mile away. A cave, I say, pointing. That could be where it's taking people. Peter follows my gaze, then freezes. Robert, he whispers, look. At the edge of the tree line below us, a massive figure stands watching. In the moonlight, I can finally see it clearly. 8 feet tall at least, covered in dark fur, with a face that's almost human, but not quite. Its eyes reflect the moonlight, like a cat's. It knows we see it. It wants us to see it. Slowly, deliberately, it raises one enormous hand and points directly at us. Then it turns and moves into the trees, heading toward the cave opening. It's leading us, Peter says, or luring us, I counter. But we both know we're going to follow. We have to find Dr. Murray. We make our way down the other side of the slope, keeping the cave entrance in sight. Every instinct I have screams danger, but I push forward. 30 years as a ranger, and I've never abandoned anyone in these woods. I'm not starting now. As we near the cave, the forest goes completely silent again. No wind in the leaves, no night insects, nothing. Just our footsteps and breathing. The cave mouth looms before us, a black hole in the hillside. I ready my rifle, and the flare gun I took from the cabin. Stay behind me, I tell Peter. If something happens to me, you run. Don't look back. Just run. He gives me a look that says he has no intention of leaving me, but nods anyway. I take a deep breath and step into the darkness of the cave, flicking on my flashlight. The beam cuts through the blackness, revealing a tunnel leading downward. The walls are smooth, too smooth to be natural. Something carved this, Peter whispers, running his hand along the wall. We move deeper, the tunnel widening as we go. The air gets cooler, damper. The smell is stronger here, that musky animal scent mixed with something else. Something old. The tunnel opens into a large chamber, and my flashlight beam falls on something that makes my heart skip a beat. Items are arranged carefully around the edges of the space. Backpacks, camping gear, clothing. Decades worth of lost hikers' belongings displayed like museum pieces, and there against the far wall is Dr. Murray's pack. "Catherine!" I call out, my voice echoing in the chamber. No answer. Peter moves to examine the collected items, his face growing pale. "Robert," he says, holding up a faded patch, "this belonged to my grandfather. He disappeared in these woods 50 years ago. The implications hit me like a physical blow. Whatever has been taking people, it's been doing it for generations, and it keeps their things like trophies." A sound from deeper in the cave draws our attention, a soft shuffling, then a low moan that might be human. "Catherine," I call again, moving toward the sound. The chamber narrows into another tunnel, this one sloping deeper underground. I lead the way, rifle ready, flashlight probing the darkness ahead. The tunnel ends in another chamber, smaller than the first. And there, huddled against the wall, is Dr. Murray. She looks up as our light hits her face, her eyes wide with fear and something else. Recognition, but also warning. "Run," she whispers. A massive shape drops from the ceiling behind us, blocking the exit. The creature stands to its full height, towering over us in the narrow space. Up close, it's even more terrifying. Powerful muscles rippling under dark fur, hands with opposable, thumbs ending in wicked claws, eyes intelligent and calculating. I raise my rifle and fire without hesitation. The shot is deafening in the enclosed space. The creature staggers back, dark blood welling from a wound in its shoulder, but it doesn't fall. Instead, it roars, a sound like nothing I've ever heard, part animal rage, part something almost human. The sound shakes dust from the cave ceiling. I fire again, and again the creature takes the hit but keeps coming. It swipes at me with one massive arm, catching me across the chest and sending me flying against the wall. The impact knocks the wind from my lungs and my rifle from my hands. Peter rushes to help me up, while Dr. Murray scrambles toward us. The creature blocks the exit, watching us with those intelligent eyes. It's not attacking immediately. It's waiting, thinking. "The flare gun," Dr. Murray gasps. "The light, it hates bright light." I pull the flare gun from my jacket, aim, and fire. The flare streaks toward the creature, erupting in brilliant red light that fills the chamber. The creature howls, covering its eyes, backing away from the intense light. The exit is momentarily clear. "Go!" I shout, pushing Dr. Murray and Peter toward the tunnel. "Get out!" They run for the exit. I follow, pausing only to grab my fallen rifle. The flare is already starting to dim. We won't have much time. We race, back through the first chamber, and up the tunnel toward the cave entrance. Behind us, I hear the creature recovering, following. It moves impossibly fast for something so large. As we near the cave mouth, the tunnel begins to shake. Small rocks fall from the ceiling. "It's causing a cave-in!" Dr. Murray yells. "We're just feet from the exit when the shaking intensifies. A large section of the ceiling collapses between me and the others. "Robert!" Peter calls from the other side of the fall. "Keep going!" I yell back. "I'll find another way out!" The rumbling continues. More of the ceiling threatens to give way. I have to move deeper into the cave to avoid being crushed. I hear Peter and Dr. Murray calling my name, but their voices grow fainter as the cave continues to collapse around me. I'm being sealed in, separated from them and the outside world. I turn and face the darkness, raising my rifle. The creature is there, watching me from the shadows. It planned this, separated me from the others. But why? What do you want? I ask, though I don't expect an answer. It moves closer into the dim light, filtering through cracks in the cave-in. For a long moment, we just stare at each other, predator and prey. But I'm no longer sure which is which. Then it turns and moves deeper into the cave, looking back once, as if expecting me to follow. I have no choice. The way out is blocked. My only option is forward, deeper into the darkness, following a creature that's been hunting in these woods for generations. I take a breath and follow, wondering if I'll ever see daylight again. Outside the cave, Peter and Dr. Murray make it to safety just as the entrance completely collapses. They call for me until their voices are hoarse, but there's no answer from within the sealed cave. They make their way back to Ranger headquarters, bringing their incredible story and evidence of what they found. A massive search operation is launched. Teams comb the area for weeks, but find no trace of me or the cave entrance, which seems to have vanished completely. I'm officially listed as missing, presumed dead in the line of duty. A memorial service is held. My name is added to the Rangers' honor roll. Life in the Boundary Waters continues. Tourists come and go. The forest keeps its secrets. Years pass. Then the stories begin. Hikers lost in remote areas report encounters with an elderly hermit who mysteriously appears during emergencies, leading them to safety before vanishing into the forest without a trace. They describe a weathered face, keen eyes that miss nothing, and a quiet authority that makes even the most panicked hikers follow his lead. Some say he moves through the forest with an uncanny awareness, anticipating dangers before they appear. Others claim he's accompanied by a large, shadow-like figure that keeps its distance but seems to watch over him. Rangers investigate these stories but never find this mysterious helper. Just footprints that sometimes seem human, sometimes not, leading into the deepest parts of the woods where few dare to venture. And on nights when the hunter's moon hangs full and bright over the Boundary Waters, some claim to hear two voices calling from deep in the forest. One human, one definitely. Not their howls twining together in what sounds almost like conversation. The forest keeps its secrets, and I have become one of them.